Can the Detroit Lions continue their incredible 2024 season against the Indianapolis Colts and the Green Bay Packers and San Francisco 49ers face off in a storied rivalry? The ultimate NFL pregame show starts now.
It's the ultimate NFL pregame show. Every team, every game, every angle. The local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network going head-to-head on every matchup. It's the ultimate NFL pregame show. Unprecedented insight, unrivaled passion, and unsurpassed knowledge. It's the ultimate NFL pregame show. The Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Week 12 in the NFL is here, and we've got everything you need to know heading into the weekend from the local experts across the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher, and from the primetime game of Ravens and Chargers to the big 4 o'clock matchup with the Packers and the 49ers to why the Lions and the Colts game may be more interesting than to be expected this week. We're going to go game by game to make you the most informed fan for game day. So we have a great slate of week 12 action. Crazy word here, less than a week till Thanksgiving. And that obviously is going to be a crazy slate in itself, but teams fighting for playoff positioning, fighting for conference record. There is so much we're going to talk about here today on the Ultimate NFL pregame show. So let's start with a look at the 1 p.m. Eastern slate of games. And kicking us off this week is the Detroit Lions and the Indianapolis Colts. Detroit having an incredible season, best team in football. Then you got the Colts, who have gone from Anthony Richardson to Joe Flacco and back to Anthony Richardson once again. So Matt Derry of Locked On Lions, as well as Jake Arthur of Locked On Colts, get ready for game time.
All right, welcome back to Crossover Thursday, everybody, which is presented by Prize Picks. Remember to go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play Just 5. All right, Matt. So what are you thinking in this one? What are the biggest keys for the Lions? Because, you know, I don't feel like there's been a lot of roadblocks for the Lions I have to face so far. And this probably isn't a matchup you're super afraid of. But if the Lions had to hang their hats on a few things to get the win, what are you thinking?
Well, look, Jake, they got to go on the road, and they've been perfect on the road this year. Their one loss has been at home, and they're probably due to lose a road game. But again, this is a really dominant team that's played so well. They go into every game focused on that game. I do think a short work week coming up after this with the Bears on Thanksgiving, playing 3 games and whatever it is, 11-day span. I mean, it's a lot. Mm-hmm. But I think they want to pay, I don't say pay the Bears back, but I think they want to put the Bears away on Thanksgiving and a little Thanksgiving drought. They just got off of what Dan Campbell said was as complete a performance as they could have had against Jacksonville. So maybe a small trap. You want the focus to be there. Another key certainly is stopping Anthony Richardson in the run game. I think it would be smart of Steichen and company to roll him out a little bit, to do what they did on that touchdown where they pulled the right guard and he ran left. I think the Lions could be a little susceptible to that with Derek Barnes and Alex Anzalone, 2 of their better, chase down quarterbacks, linebackers out of this game. And number 3 is just turnovers on the road. Last game they survived the 5 turnovers and the 5 interceptions on the road in Houston. I don't think that'll happen again, but keep an eye on Stewart and Buckner. Don't let them get close to Goff. That pressure in his face sometimes causes some bad throws. So those are 3 things I think the Lions need to keep an eye on. How about for Indy?
Yeah. So for the Colts, there's kind of some newness, with the quarterback situation developing all the time. But I would like to see them establish the run at some point with Anthony Richardson. Jonathan Taylor is going to get carries. They can't always run him throughout the game. They tried early last week, but it didn't work. I think establishing Anthony Richardson as a running threat as well, I think that certainly helps keep the defense honest a little bit. They can't always disguise everything they want to when your quarterback and running back are both effective runners. So get Anthony running a little bit as well. They did it last week for the first time this season, it seemed like. So let's really see them build on that. Limit turnovers. The Colts have had some careless turnovers this year. Anthony in his first stint as the starter, Joe Flacco had some really, really bad ones a couple weeks ago. Turnovers can happen sometimes. Just try and limit those. Like Anthony's had a problem with the sometimes, just the accepting the snap or the handoff exchange has been a problem. He's had a few fumbles based on that. Clean that stuff up because that's so it's so avoidable, and it's unnecessary to have creep in and, derail things just because you can't get the exchange down. So that, and then the pass rush, I don't think it's realistic to emulate everything Houston did to cause problems for Jared Goff. But, they could be getting Tyquan Lewis back, and that is arguably their best depth pass rusher. If you can have Tyquan Lewis and Dayo Adangbo and Laiatu Latu and Kwity Paye all fresh throughout the game because you can rotate healthy guys, that would be really good. Obviously, Buckner and Grover Stewart there in the middle. If you can have an effective defensive line because you're churning guys in and out and they're all kind of getting theirs, I think that goes a long way towards forcing Goff into making some decisions and throws that he maybe doesn't want to. Because I think in this game, to play spoiler, you're going to have to get some turnovers. You're going to have to get some pressure. And so those three things in particular, I think the Colts are going to have to do.
Jake, I'm going to take the Lions. I think maybe a little bit of a slobber knocker, like 26-23, something like that. I like Jake Bates on the carpet. He's kicked the ball very well, but Indy plays all close games, man. I don't tell you. And I think this week will be closer than last week where the Lions won by 46 points. So what do you think?
Yeah, the Colts don't often get blown out or just do complete no-shows. I wanna see this game be a shootout almost, because I just don't know that the Colts are gonna hold the Lions to like a low output. I'm gonna give it to the Lions 34-31.
Okay.
I want to see Anthony build on that performance last week, and it doesn't mean the Colts have to win, but I want to see him be able to respond to another team's touchdowns. And I want to see, if you're scoring 31 points, it probably means you put together a product throughout the game and didn't have these long lulls. That's something the Colts have had problems with offensively, is just long periods of time of not being productive. So I would like to see the Colts offense respond to another strong offense. If the defense holds the Lions 34 points, I think they could probably live with that as long as they did some things right. Like I said, a couple turnovers and some sacks. But just being realistic, I think the Lions do pull this one out about 34-31.
Big shout out to Matt and to Jake for their insight. For more on Matt, check him out over at Locked On Lions. And for Jake, check him out over at Locked On Colts, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Next up, we have the Dallas Cowboys and the Washington Commanders, a big NFC East matchup. Now, a lot of people maybe thought that the standings would be flip-flops between these two teams, but it's the Commanders on top and Dallas absolutely reeling right now. So David Harrison of Locked On Commanders and Marcus Mosher of Locked On Cowboys have keys to victory, key storylines, and so much more.
This week's crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Cowboys, Locked On Commanders is brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app, use the code Locked On NFL to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 ticket. Marcus Mosher of Locked On Cowboys. Dallas Cowboys visiting the Washington Commanders. First time these two divisional rivals will play. It is one of the great rivalries in sports history, certainly in NFL history. I think it was ranked by Bucky Brooks of NFL.com as the third best NFL rivalry today. Unfortunately, in most recent times, one of these two teams has been down pretty bad, and that certainly takes a little bit of the shine off of the rivalry. I think, as much as Commanders fans don't appreciate losing to the Philadelphia Eagles, I think you appreciate the fact that both teams came in with a whole lot of excitement and confidence in that game. You'd love to see the Cowboys and Commanders both doing that. Maybe next year. Marcus, if the Cowboys are going to pull off this upset, it's now to 10.5 points, like we just said. The spread is massive. What do you think, or what do the Cowboys have to do in order to get that win?
So on offense, they have to be able to run the ball. Last week, Cooper Rush dropped back to throw the ball, I believe 56 times against Houston. And I know the final score was 34-10, but that was a really close game going into the last couple of minutes of the third quarter. The Cowboys had a chance to cut it to 3 going into the fourth quarter. They need to be able to run the ball in this game. And I don't want to see it out of shotgun. They did not have a single run last week from under center. You're going to have to do it in this game because you can't expose your backup quarterback that much. On defense, I actually have more faith in their defense than their offense at this point. You should be getting back Jordan Lewis. We'll see about Deron Bland. It sounds like he could be getting back. Marshawn Nealon has a chance to play this week. You're starting to get some of the pieces back on that side of the ball. You have to figure out a way to contain Jaden Daniels, keep him in the pocket, make him beat you from the pocket. He will do that, but that's much better than him taking off with his legs because the Cowboys can't stop the run. And then the big X factor here, special teams. This is where the Cowboys can win games. Kevontae Turpin, probably the best returner in the league. Brandon Aubrey, probably the best kicker in the league. Once you get past the 50-yard line, you are in field goal range. Make plays on special teams. Give the Cowboys or give your offense short fields and just try to keep this game close into the fourth quarter. That's how they can potentially steal a game from the Washington Commanders in Week 12.
Yeah, man. I'm with you on that special teams thing, especially. A couple weeks ago against Pittsburgh Steelers, talk about mistakes. Olamide Zaccheaus muffing 2 punts, was able to fall on one. Unfortunately, the Steelers were able to fall on the other one, and I'm not going to say who, but I watched a punt returner for the Commanders muff a punt in practice today. So certainly don't want to see that kind of stuff continue. And then, Turpin, if you're a special teams coordinator and you're not terrified of this dude, anytime you have to face him, then you're not going to do your job very well. So certainly some big things there. My question for you, Marcus, is actually Nealon. So Nealon is someone that I was really excited about coming into the draft process. Didn't know, how much the Commanders would prioritize that position, especially after all the free agent acquisitions they made in the offseason. But let me ask you, going, pre-injury, all that stuff, like how was he coming along? And then what do you really like? How good can you expect him to possibly be coming back from that injury?
So I think it was frustrating because the game the Cowboys lost DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons was against the Giants in Week 4. They played Pittsburgh in Week 5, and this was Marshawn Nealon's first start. He was going to play almost every snap, and he got hurt on the second snap of the game. And it was such a bummer because he was starting to show that power where he could drive offensive linemen back off the ball. And that's what they've desperately needed on this defensive line. We'll see what he looks like coming back from a lower body injury, his first game, if he's able to play this week. But I think long-term, he is a guy that does make sense opposite of Micah Parsons in this defense.
Yeah, could be a pairing that look, the Washington Commanders offensive line I think has been better than a lot of people expected, but there's still going to be an off-season conversation about upgrading at least a couple of those positions on the offensive line, and looking at what the Cowboys have brewing behind this rough season in their pass rush. They're going to need it for the Washington Commanders to win this game. I'm going to throw out kind of the obvious one here in the second one, but the first one's got to be move Terry McLaurin. And Marcus, I've actually got a question for you coming up here about that one. It'll be interesting to see what you say on it. Number 2, sack the crap out of Cooper Rush. You just have to do it, right? Especially if these offensive linemen can't get healthy. This is a game where you got to keep an eye on that Dallas Cowboys injury report, because who does and doesn't play is going to be really important. And don't give up any free chicken, right? We talk about those explosive passes to CeeDee Lamb. Rico Dowdle is a guy that, that pass play out of shotgun from the 21-yard line going in is the exact same pass play they used against the Arizona Cardinals. Saw it one time on tape. Told my listeners, if the Cowboys get to the 21-yard line, watch out for this play. It's the exact same play they pulled off, and I can't believe they pulled it off. Don't give up any free chicken, anything that you can easily scout against. And then third, time of possession, man. Ground the game. Brian Robinson is off the injury report. Austin Eckler can certainly be effective. Jeremy McNichols has had his moments. Hell, keep all 4 running backs active, and Chris Rodriguez Jr. can do some pounding up between the guards and tackles. He'll probably be inactive. But the bottom line is the Washington Commanders are 1-4 in games where they lost the time of possession battle. They're undefeated in games where they won the time of possession battle. And some of that goes hand in hand. You win the game, you run the clock, you ground it, got it. But there's also some things in there that are just indicative of how this team wins best, and it's by controlling that ground game. So that's why we talk about running the game. Marcus, I'll let you ask me any clarifying questions, but I want to ask you this one first. Of the NFL receivers, we got to qualify everything, right? Of NFL receivers who have more targets this season than Terry McLaurin, there are 10 of them. DJ Moore has the second highest percentage of single alignment. Split wide left 59% of the time for the Chicago Bears. That is the second highest single position alignment of any receiver in the NFL that has more targets than Terry McLaurin does this season. Terry McLaurin is number 1. What do you think Terry McLaurin's percentages compared to DJ Moore's?
Oh, man. Is it not close? Tell me.
It's not close.
Just had to get it in there, right? Terry McLaurin's a really good player. I maybe didn't love him early on in his career, but listen, I was wrong on Terry McLaurin. He's awesome. He's way better than I ever thought he could be as a prospect. Way better.
76%, Marcus,
Ridiculous.
of Terry McLaurin's routes have come from split wide left alignment.
It's ridiculous.
And look, this is the conversation we had preseason about Cliff Kingsbury, because every Cardinals fan was like, he locked DeAndre Hopkins in split wide left jail. He's going to lock Terry McLaurin in the same prison. It is obviously something that has happened all season long. But just like a lot of things, it's not a problem until it's a problem. It became a problem against Philadelphia Eagles. And that's what kind of spurred the research and the questions. Ask Dan Quinn, not directly because you don't do that, but I essentially asked Dan Quinn about that, and he essentially said it's probably going to change. But that is a ridiculous number. So I just had to share that with everybody.
I'm glad that you might mention that, because Trayvon Diggs has played much better. He's usually lined up on that side. Against Nico Collins last week, I believe there was 20 routes where they were matched up against each other. Diggs allowed one catch for 11 yards in that entire game. And this has been, at least historically, a matchup that Trayvon Diggs has done well. Now, again, he's coming off a torn ACL. I'm not sure he's the same type of player, but that is a battle where if the Cowboys can win that one, and you're not going to take Terry McLaurin completely out of the game, but limit him, maybe you have a chance to survive on that side of the ball.
Yeah. The Eagles didn't take Terry completely out of the game either. One catch for 10 yards, Terry McLaurin.
Yeah, I mean, that's not
he was certainly in the game. But yeah, if there's anybody who knows what Trayvon Diggs can do against Terry McLaurin, it's Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr. So hopefully somebody over there is talking to Cliff Kingsbury and say, hey, dude, we got to get off that number. We got to get off that percentage. Let's at least lower it a couple 20% or so in this next game.
Check out David over at Locked On Commanders and Marcus over on Locked On Cowboys, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Continuing on another divisional matchup here, the Minnesota Vikings and the Chicago Bears. The Bears have been a mess this entire season, and big changes likely ahead in the offseason. We've already seen a bunch already. The Minnesota Vikings looking to figure out what type of team they are heading into the home stretch. So Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings and Lauren Cox of Locked On Bears have everything you need to know for the game.
Continuing our crossover Thursday, Locked On Bears, Locked On Vikings podcast. I'm Lauren Cox from Locked On Bears, alongside Luke Braun from Locked On Vikings. And as always, our crossover Thursdays are presented by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app and use our promo code Locked On NFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Luke, for me, this game for Chicago comes down completely to, like, will they have a plan that works for what Brian Flores is going to throw at Caleb Moore? Like,
okay, we can figure this out. So what do the Bears do? Like, what is their preferred option when a team shows blitz? What do they want to do? Do they check into a different play? Is it a hot route? Like, what do they want to try to do?
Well, for the first, 8 games of the season, it was have everyone run deep routes and hope that Caleb Williams can hold on to the ball long enough to get rid of it.
So it's scramble. Like, that is an option that some teams do. Like, that's perfectly valid on paper.
Yes, but last week against the Packers, it was much more, get something going, like a pre-snap motion into a play where a receiver can run a quick route and get that sort of head start on the motion there. It's have a running back just sort of chip and release, so you've got an option to get to there, or a receiver on a quick route to something to the outside. They didn't hit the middle of the field that much, but it's like give Caleb a quick 3-step concept towards the sideline to get rid of the ball and not let the pressure get up in his face.
Interesting. So that reminds me of Monday Night Football last year. That the Vikings, the Vikings, Josh Dobbs threw 4 interceptions and ended up benched the next week. Where that's one of the funniest next gen stats passing charts of all time, because it was 22. I remember 22 perimeter screens or throws behind the line of scrimmage. It was all they did. So I wonder if you're going to see something similar, where the Vikings probably really want you to do that. Brian Flores loves it if your offense becomes like check down merchants. And if everything is just going to be, little shots to the flat, they have a better tool against that. I think shots to the flat last year, late last year, were a little too good against them. They cover it a little differently now, where they have corners playing a little bit further upfield so that they can, tackle those down a little bit better. So if you're going to motion stuff out and get, a lot of little quick flippies, we're going to have a 2.7 depth of target and, a completion percentage of 80 and a whole bunch of 3-and-outs, like that's probably the Vikings vision for this. And whether they actually send those blitzes or not, if they can just show it and force you into those ideas and force Caleb to like really be looking at that check down really hard, they'll be perfectly happy with that, whether they back out or not.
See, and even that represented progress for this Bears offense. Like just getting to the check down and getting to the quick release play was like, oh, great. So it's a 3-and-out, but at least it was 3rd and 2 instead of 3rd and 10 this time. Like that's
and so we just don't want it anymore with Caleb Williams. We don't want him to like, oh, blitzer, let's evade and go make something. Like we don't want those scramble drills. Like I know DJ Moore on the scramble drill has been like a thing, but like, is that we just don't want that anymore? We want like, please just like be a pocket quarterback.
They only want that as a last resort, right? And too often that's had to be sort of the only resort because the pressure gets there before anyone's open, or the pressure disrupts the timing of that first read, and then it's scramble drill stuff, and then you got players kind of freelancing a little bit too much, and they're not on the same page there. So like against Green Bay, Caleb was much more inclined to just take off when he escaped. They weren't having to like hang behind the line of scrimmage and wait for something to get open and then just kind of throw it away. It was just like, screw it. If you're under pressure, go. Just run, just go, just take off, get the 7 yards that you can scramble, and don't worry about making the backyard football hero throw just yet. Like one step at a time.
Gotcha. So I think here's what this one comes down to then for me, because that will compress the Bears offense a lot. I bet that the offense compresses a lot here as they just are going to walk in expecting a million blitzes, and they're going to come in with a super like quick hitter, outside shots, kind of lots of perimeter screens kind of game plan.
Totally.
So how they find their shots, I think, will determine what happens here. We haven't even begun to talk about the other side of the ball because I know the Bears defense is good, and how the Vikings will move the ball on that is also going to be interesting. But like, for me, the way it comes down to is like, if I'm the Bears, I would honestly say, how about we just block with 8 and see if we can't find something downfield? Like, why are we working this hard? Let's just like 7, 8 in protection, blitz all you want. We have everybody, and we're going to find a hole over the middle because you only have 5 guys in coverage, and like play it that way. But if they don't do that, like if they can find a way, whatever it is, if they can find a way to keep it downfield, to get those shot plays and not just turn into the Oregon Ducks, then like I think that's the best chance the Bears have.
The problem is when you're leaving guys to block with 8, like you still need your 3rd string left guard who's starting in this game to hold up.
Yeah.
If he's gonna have a one-on-one block there, like you're still counting on,
especially on 3rd down,
give you 3 seconds there, and that works sometimes, but not all the time, and that's gonna be the real challenge.
Well, outside of stunts, they don't really rush the interior. Like Jonathan Bullard is a run player. Harrison Phillips is a run player. Like Jerry Tillery is probably their best interior pass rusher, and he's Jerry freaking Tillery. Like they don't really do it. And the way that they get you on the inside and beat the guard is by either stunting. So somebody like Andrew Van Ginkel, who's having a ridiculous season, or Jonathan Grenard, who's very good, will loop inside, and then he gets to go against the guard or the center. Or if it's 3rd down, they bring out all edge rushers, and you have, Patrick Jones in there, or Jihad Ward, or the Dallas Turner, the youngster in there, who, well, they don't actually have him rush inside a lot. He'll go inside and they'll bump Jonathan Grenard inside and like get that matchup that way. But that only happens on 3rd down. So if your tackles can hold up, then the Vikings are going to have to do creative stuff. And a lot of times what it is it's going to be, can that guard beat Ivan Pace? Or is Ivan Pace going to like duck, dip, dive, and dodge and, flash his way in? And then I know DeAndre Swift is not practicing today. So who's going to be at running back and how is he in pass protection is also like really important.
And Roshan Johnson's their preferred pass protecting back anyway, and he's
so they work in their favor kind of
there. So
he's a better running back than DeAndre Swift. I'm sorry. That's sorry, Bears fans. That's the truth. I hate DeAndre Swift. I think he's been really bad this year.
And I think the same thing about Khalil Herbert, who they just traded to the Cincinnati Bengals, but that's a separate conversation. Real quick before we wrap up on the Bears defense versus the Vikings offense side.
Yes.
I would say been more and more cracks in Matt Eberflus's defense the last couple of weeks. Run defense has been bad pretty much all year. So it bodes well for Aaron Jones getting some things going, but the pass rush has slowed down the last few weeks as well. Montez Sweat hasn't been making the big impact plays, and they haven't had their other young guys. Like for a while, one of the young guys was kind of stepping up. Like 1 week it'd be Jervon Dexter, 1 week it'd be Austin Booker. Like they kind of took turns stepping up, and been a little bit of a drought of like somebody needs to make some plays up front, and then when the quarterbacks have had a lot of time to throw, then it's a little bit too easy for them to get things rolling downfield. So I'm curious if they tighten up a little bit in this game, or if they keep slowly breaking apart more and more. By the way, with a third string safety looking to start next to Kevin Byard as well.
Interesting. So the Vikings really want long pockets. Like they want to hold the ball forever. Sam Darnold just likes to, but also the concepts that they run, especially the downfield shots, are like long developing. They're 7-step drop play action. Like they love a long pocket. So if all the defensive line needs is time, they will have the time to work with. And the Vikings will have to like block that up with Cam Robinson, and they actually benched Ed Ingram last week. They got Dalton Reisner in now at right guard. So it's a line that is not without problems, but has still been pretty solid.
Yeah, I think I think what it comes down to is then just, how devastating are the turnover opportunities? Do the Bears take advantage of it if Sam Darnold puts in harm's way? And if they do, is it a turnover in the end zone where the Bears offense still has to go 80 yards, so it doesn't really spring the offense, or is there a big return that sparks the Bears offense and makes their drive easier? Like the level of devastation of a turnover in either direction, I think, can go a long way towards swinging this in one spot or another. But safe to assume, Luke, you're feeling pretty good about a Vikings victory on Sunday.
Never in Soldier Field. I know better. It's a divisional game on the road that is always tough. I don't care what horrible spot the Bears are in. It's going to be a tough game. I think the spread is probably appropriate, where they're favored on the road, but only by a little, but only by 3.5, right? Like I would even maybe say 2.5 is more appropriate, to give that hook point back because of that turnover thing. Like there's absolutely the world where Sam Darnold's brain falls out. He throws 3 turnovers and they're down 21-0 in the first quarter.
The Vikings have won 4 in a row at Soldier Field. I think it'll be closer than the record suggests.
They always play bad. Like the Justin Fields of it all notwithstanding. Okay. Like that's not, it's always tough to go on the division and win. You never take those for granted. I don't care how bad a team is. It's always tough.
Totally. I tend to agree. Like, I don't think this is going to be like a Vikings blowout, that the way you think an 8-2 team versus a 4-7 team should go. But I do think the Vikings win one that's closer than Minnesota would like it to be, but maybe you're never quite super scared. Like, oh no, oh gosh, they're really going to beat us. It's like more like, oh man, they're keeping it closer than we like it to be for 4 quarters, but you'll finish out on top.
I think the big question too is, can the Bears pull out of the funk emotionally? Like the Hail Mary hurts, the Patriots game hurts, now this blocked kick hurt. Like every single thing has been such a gut punch. So if there is a swing of momentum where the Bears suddenly start believing again, I think a bunch of the things that happened in the last 3 games evaporate, because suddenly now you're playing with your hair on fire, and that's what you need to do.
There was a quote from Cole Kmet this week on his podcast where he said, he was talking to TJ Edwards, a linebacker. He's like, man, we both grew up watching this Bears team struggle. And like, now we're living it, man. Like we're living what we watched growing up, and it sucks. So that's the state of being a Chicago Bears fan right now.
A tumultuous season.
Be sure to check out Lauren over at Locked On Bears and Luke over at Locked On Vikings, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Kansas City Chiefs suffered their first loss of the season to the Buffalo Bills, and the Carolina Panthers will hope to make that 2 in a row. Chris Clark of Locked On Chiefs, Julian Council of Locked On Panthers dive into if this could be a Panthers upset or if this is just Chiefs all the way.
Crossover Thursday is presented by Prize Picks. Download the app and use code LOCKEDONNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. I'm Julian Council, the host of Locked On Panthers. He is Chris Clark, one of the hosts of Locked On Chiefs. We're talking Panthers and Chiefs on Sunday here in Charlotte. The Chiefs are 10.5-point favorites on the road. Look, last week, it looked like it opened up at 11.5, so the public has at least bet that down to 10.5. We'll see. Maybe it gets down to 9.5 if the Panthers can find a way to shock the world. But looking at this game on Sunday, Kansas City, 3 things that they must do to win this game. Now, considering how well the Chiefs have played, they maybe only just need one thing, and Patrick Mahomes to be Patrick Mahomes. But you can give me 2 more things, Chris, that the Chiefs need to do in order to win this game on Sunday, and maybe replace that first one, Mahomes being Mahomes.
For the past 3 weeks, they had been pretty good about not turning the ball over. Then last week, they turned the ball over twice. They have to win the turnover battle. They cannot turn the ball over. If they lose the turnover battle, this becomes a game, because you talk about it being a 10.5-point game right now. 1 turnover, that could easily be a 7-point flop. Yeah. It could be 14 if the Chiefs are right on the edge of scoring and then turn the ball over and the Panthers go get a touchdown. So they have to keep control of the ball, and I think that's something that Mahomes has to get better at. He has struggled this season. He's got 11 turnovers, 11 picks. You just cannot continue to do that and continue to play football deep into the playoffs. So that's something they need to get under control over the next couple of months. So take care of the ball and run the ball. If they run the ball and they run the ball well against the Panthers, I think that this is a game that they should be able to win, and it should be a 2-score game, if not a little bit more, because I do think that this offense has the ability to run the ball, and with getting Pacheco back, you have the ability to maybe run it a little bit more than you have in the past, and you're going to have two guys that should be able to get out there and have legs underneath them to be able to run the ball effectively. So I think that those could be two big keys in this game.
Yeah, what's going on, man, with Mahomes? Because I turn on these games and it's just interception. Like, what the hell, man? Like, this is not what we're expecting out of him as he's leading the league right now in interceptions.
Well, I will. To be fair, the last interception was him just trying to make a play on 4th down. So I throw that one out, and he's had some that are bad plays on his part, but he's also had some.
The first pass play, like on Sunday against Buffalo, is a pick, and like right then and there,
yeah, that's
as a neutral observer, I'm like, they're going to lose this game because like we've already known he's had those struggles this year. But when you come out and immediately throw a pick and let that crowd that's already ridiculously lubed up and ready to go let them be even drunker off of that interception, like that's not good stuff.
No, and I mean, it was basically fundamentals. I mean, he tried to throw the ball, and he was moving when he was trying to throw it. Didn't pay attention to his feet. Didn't pay attention to his fundamentals and the way he throws the ball, and it sailed it, and it goes for a pick, and that becomes a Buffalo touchdown, and that completely changed the game. If he doesn't throw that pick to start, I think the Chiefs' offense probably goes down the field and scores. They've been generally pretty good about that on their first 15 type plays, going down and scoring early on those drives. So I agree. I think that's a huge issue. But the other reality is that they've had bad luck. I mean, he's had bad plays, but if you go look at, like, if you believe in PFF, PFF has turnover-worthy plays. I think I saw something last week where he had maybe 5 turnover-worthy plays and he had 9 picks. So at that point, you're sitting there going, okay, he's getting picks on plays that aren't turnover-worthy. That tells you how bad the luck is. So at some point, you'd think that luck switches back and goes back in Kansas City's favor, to be even at least a little bit. But it hasn't happened so far this season.
Yeah, and you also wonder if that's attributed to maybe just the guys that have been out so far this season at receiver, and maybe that goes into it. So we'll see if he can cut those down. But looking at Carolina, as far as the 3 out of the probably 90 things they need to do to win this game, I mean, not 90. I'm kidding, obviously. I'm sure someone's like, why are you saying 90? Relax. The 3 things that they need to do. It's a joke, folks. It's football. Number 1. They got to find a way to run the ball. As you're talking about, Kansas City, they're second in the NFL, allowing 3.6 yards per rush attempt. They're third in total yards rushing allowed. Carolina's only 25th in the NFL in rushing, but they're 10th in yards per attempt. And Chuba, as I mentioned earlier, 4th in the NFL in rushing yardage, 5th in rushing success rate among running backs with at least 125 attempts. He's been outstanding. Jonathan Brooks, now he adds an element to that run game and also in the pass game as a back out of the backfield trying to catch the ball. So got to run it. Be able to take some pressure off of Bryce Young, and you're just not going to win this game if you cannot control the line of scrimmage. And it's not like Buffalo ran the ball well last week and they only had 104 yards, but when it mattered most, especially with Josh Allen, they got it done. So for Carolina,
the difference is they have Josh Allen. I mean, no offense to the Panthers, but you don't have Josh Allen, so that changes things a little bit.
Absolutely, and like it's not like Bryce. If Bryce makes that kind of play, then. Wow, hat tip to you. You would have to do the same thing as a Chiefs fan. But no, that they're going to have to do it the old school way by lining up and trying to run it down their throat. And Cade Mays could get started once again at center, which has been an interesting development as Brady Christensen was in that role. The Nicky Aquana, who's back this week at left tackle, he was out the last couple of weeks, and Christensen moved to the left tackle. And Cade Mays, who was on the Panthers roster last 2 years, they cut him at roster cutdown. He was on a Giants practice squad. They went out there and brought him back to Carolina, and he did a really good job against Dexter Lawrence last 2 weeks ago in that game in Germany. So we'll see what he can do potentially this week against Chris Jones, another high-paid, talented defensive tackle. Second thing I got to do, got to cut it loose, man. Like Bryce Young is last in the NFL in adjusted yards gained per pass attempt at 4.14. And just to add some context to it, the next closest player is Deshaun Watson at 5.12. So that's nearly a full yard more per pass attempt. And Andy Dalton, by the way, Hasn't been much better when he's played. He's 33rd out of 36 quarterbacks qualifying according to Pro Football Reference at 5.37. Dave Canales admitted earlier this week that he has not allowed Bryce Young the opportunity to throw the ball down the field as much as maybe he should have, and he's got to do a better job. He's taking accountability, and you're not going to beat the Chiefs by just trying to straight up run the ball if you don't even try to open up the pass game and throw it down the field. And I looked at it. So 4 receivers last week for Buffalo had 20-plus yard receptions. First time it's happened for Kansas City this season that they've allowed that. Panthers, shockingly, twice this year, they've had 4 different receivers have 20-plus yard receptions. That was against the Raiders in their win, and then the blowout loss against Chicago. So they got to cut it loose, open up things offensively to have any sort of chance. And then we talked about this a moment ago. They got to force and take advantage of Patrick Mahomes' mistakes, whether it's been on Mahomes or just bad luck. He's turned the ball over. 11 interceptions this season, but it's only the 9th worst interception percentage in the league. And the opponents have turned 4 of those interceptions into touchdowns and 3 of them into field goals. So last week, Buffalo cast that into a touchdown. Carolina has to do that if they're going to win this game. They're healthier in the secondary. They got DJ Wonnum back. They have to be able to not just only force turnovers, which they forced 3 of them in that win against the Giants, but they have to turn that into a touchdown. So complimentary football. We talk about it all the time here in Carolina. You do that, you have a chance to win this game on Sunday against Kansas City.
How crazy is it that the NFL has basically shifted in 2 years? Like 2 years ago, if we were talking about this, we're not talking about they have to run the ball and they have to run the ball well. But this year, if you're not running the ball well, you're not probably playing well. The reality is NFL defenses have changed the way they're defending teams, and you have to be able to run the ball. And there are not many offenses that are able to get away from that. Buffalo is one of them that can get away from that and still be okay. But generally speaking, you have to be able to run the ball, and that is just a complete change from what it's been in the NFL the past several years.
Yeah, but we're getting back to basics, in my opinion. Like I've always felt like this is a line of scrimmage game. Sure, you can throw it all over the yard, but if you can't get that yard when you need it, you're down at the goal line, you can't score, it's 3rd and inches, you can't get it, you're not going to be a championship team. And we have seen Kansas City's been able to run the football, even if we've always focused on what Mahomes could do. And we focus on the tackles when, I'm so sorry, man, Mike Rimmers also single-handedly lost Super Bowl here in 2015. He's now done it twice because that game against Tampa Bay, he also could not block to save his life. And God bless you, having to start him at left tackle. It was bad enough at right tackle, but him at left tackle, we know we focused on that game.
It was brutal.
Yeah, but like we know, like they focused on, you got to have the tackles, you got to have the passing game, all that. But man, if you can't run the ball, especially when you get to the playoffs, and Canales came here and talked about that. The team, and he comes from Seattle, and we know with Seahawks when in their prime with the Legion of Boom, but really Marshawn Lynch and Russell Wilson, they weren't asking him to do a ton. They were saying run the football until they didn't run the football when they should have ran the football against New England. But we won't rehash that here on the show. But still, like that's the basics of football, and I'm actually happy to see it as a guy who loves running game and loves defense and who loves the forward pass. But come on, relax. We need to throw the ball 50 times in this game. So last comments on this game. I don't have a score prediction. You don't have one either, but just any final thoughts just about the Chiefs and the Panthers heading this week as obviously a critical game for Kansas City as you open up the door to the rest of the AFC to come in there and potentially steal that bid or that bye week, that number 1 seed and that first round bye. There we go.
Yeah, when I look at this game, and it's nothing against the Panthers, but when I look at this game, Kansas City needs to blow the doors off of them. And Panthers can be a good team. I've watched several of their games. They have moments where they look like they could be a good team on offense and on defense. But Kansas City, this is a game that shouldn't be close. And I expect it's going to be close just because that's how Kansas City generally has played this season is they play basically just good enough to win no matter who they're playing. Obviously, that didn't work against Buffalo. But to me, Kansas City needs to come out and they need to blow the doors off of them because they need to show that they can do that. They haven't done it yet really this year. They need to show that they have the ability to come out and score a bunch of points and run away on a team. And this is really going to be probably one of your best opportunities to do it. The Panthers are up. You talked about it later. They got the Raiders coming up. They still have the Browns, the Texans, the Steelers. You're not going to be running away, on those games. You still have the Chargers and the Broncos. You're not going to be running the score up on any of those games, really, I don't think. So need to get the offense going, and it needs to happen this week.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a can't lose kind of game for Kansas City. And for Carolina, I talked about it earlier this week. This is really about Bryce Young once again. And Canales talked about last Monday after the Giants game, going to that bye week, that they're running the ball the way they want to run the ball. They're protecting like they want to. They just have to get the passing game figured out. And I wondered, would that be him opening the door to go back to Andy Dalton. And he continues to say they're evaluating this week to week, and Bryce Young has done the things that have allowed them to continue to put him out there and to build on some of the positive things he's done the last couple of weeks. But when they drafted Bryce Young #1 overall, David Tepper, the owner here in Carolina, who's the reason for all the struggles here since he bought the team, he said that Bryce Young gave them the best opportunity among the quarterbacks available in that draft to not just win a Super Bowl, but to win Super Bowls. And here's a news flash for people. If you go to the Super Bowl out of the NFC, the team you're going to face is Kansas City. So I want to see what Bryce can do against Kansas City. And I understand it's a Week 12 game. Yeah, the receivers are young, blah, blah, blah. We need to know whether this guy can do it or not. And if he can go out there and if he can spin it around and look more like that Bama Bryce, then that shows you, okay, potentially this could be the guy.
One of the biggest matchups that we haven't even talked about in this game could be Spagnuolo versus Bryce Young. Spagnuolo has eaten young quarterbacks alive at times. And so that is going to be a key in this game is can he get to Bryce Young and can he make him do things that Bryce doesn't think? Can he fool Bryce is really going to be the question. If he can fool him into turning the ball over or making bad decisions, even if it doesn't turn into a turnover, that could be huge in this game as well.
Yeah, I mean, great point. Like, these are not the stakes that you're going to have to overcome and face in the playoffs and potentially in a Super Bowl if they ever get there with Bryce Young. But these are the kind of teams and the kind of coaches and players you're going to have to go up against. You're going to have to overcome if you ever want to hoist the Lombardi. So I'm looking at that.
Chris is great. Julian is great. Check out Chris over at Locked On Chiefs and Julian over at Locked On Panthers, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We still have a lot to get to from the 1 p.m. slate of games here on the Ultimate NFL pregame show. We'll talk about the other big matchups of that time. So be sure to stay tuned. A lot to get to on the show. First, the show is sponsored by BetterHelp, and I want to shout out my family. I've gotten tons of support from my parents, brothers, everybody. It's been incredible to get that support, and I really wouldn't be where I am today without them. This month is all about gratitude, and along with the people that I just shouted out, there's another person we don't get to thank enough. That's ourselves. It's sometimes hard to remind ourselves that we're trying our best to make sense of everything, and in this crazy world, that isn't easy. Here's a reminder to send some thanks to the people in your life, including yourself. And therapy has so many benefits, whether it's learning positive coping skills, how to set boundaries, empowering you to become the best version of yourself. It's all incredible. And it isn't just for those who've experienced major trauma. It's for everyone. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Let the gratitude flow with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off the first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Welcome back into the Ultimate NFL pregame show. Kevin Oestreicher still taking it through all of Week 12's NFL action. We just talked about the first part of the 1 p.m. slate of the week. Let's dive into part two, starting off with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the New York Giants. The Bucs still fighting for that NFC South division, certainly still in that race. And the Giants pretty out of the NFC East conversation, making a quarterback change. Daniel Jones no longer there for the team. So James Yarko of Locked On Bucs and Bertusha Trena of Locked On Giants have it covered with everything you need to know leading up to game time.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Crossover Thursday, Locked On Giants, Locked On Bucs. The New York Giants host the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Sunday, 1 o'clock. Yay, I love those 1 o'clock games.
Me too.
MetLife Stadium. The return of Sterling Shepard, who is now with the Bucs, and of course Baker Mayfield is coming in. Mike Evans is coming in. It's a very good Bucs team that despite the fact that they're stuck in a losing streak, they can snap out at it at any given time. And James, what are your keys to this weekend's game for the Bucs?
Yeah, well, and don't forget Ben Bredesen's coming back too.
Yeah, Ben Bredesen,
it'll be a homecoming for him. So for the Bucs in this one, to me, it's pretty simple. You attack DeVito from all angles. You give the ball to Bucky Irving, which is not someone we have talked about yet, and then create chaos. So with DeVito, this Bucs pass rush has been inconsistent at best. You have Yaya Diaby, you have Vita Vea, you have Levante David, Kalijah Cansey, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka has shown minor flashes. Chris Braswell has really stepped up each and every week and gotten progressively better. You have the opportunity to cause problems for DeVito, who is a guy that, as we've talked about, got sacked a lot last season when he was on the field. You have to be able to get back there and get him on the ground, set the Giants up to have, be behind the sticks, have those long down and distance situations where then you can really pin your ears back and just send the house. A guy that I have on Locked On Bucks every week who works for the CBS affiliate down in Tampa said that they need to treat this game the same way they do when they play the Eagles, in the way that Todd Bowles attacks Jalen Hurts. And if there's anything that Todd Bowles does better than anyone, it's attack Jalen Hurts. Treat this the exact same way and really just set the tone from the jump. As far as the next one, give the ball to Bucky Irving. He has been the best pure running back for this team this year, the draft pick out of Oregon. The Buccaneers are one of 2 teams in the NFL to have 2 running backs with over 500 all-purpose yards and 4 touchdowns each. But Rashad has been more effective in the passing game. We need more carries out of Bucky Irving, control the tempo, control the clock, and that's going to start to open things up down the field. And then creating chaos. I've talked about it a lot on my show. The addition of Mike Edwards, Jamel Dean coming back. Now, all of a sudden, Antoine Winfield Jr. can go back to being that everything defensive weapon for Todd Bowles, where he's coming in on blitzes. He's baiting the quarterback into mistakes. He's able to play against the run. He's a little more free to roam around and do what he does best, and that is create takeaways. So in addition to the pass rush and the pressure, now all of a sudden you have a guy roaming back there that can create takeaways and just really mess with DeVito's rhythm, mess with his timing, mess with everything. But that's how the Bucs are going to get a road victory that they have to have every week now. Is a must win for the Bucs if they're going to stay in contention for the NFC South. That's how they're going to get it done.
Boy, I wish I were talking about the Giants staying in contention for the NFC East. It's been so long. It really has. But look, let's start one game at a time. Obviously, the Giants, coming off the shockwave of the quarterback change, I look for the Giants to start this game. I mentioned earlier in the show how the Bucs have had a shaky defense, both pass defense because of their injuries, and their run defense hasn't been exactly, lighting the world on fire, nor has the Giants for that matter. But we're talking Giants here. So that being said, if I'm the Giants, I maybe try and loosen things up a little bit, get into a rhythm with the running game. Tyrone Tracy, the rookie, has been absolutely, a godsend for this team. I'm not saying that he's Saquon Jr. or on the same level as Saquon Barkley, but Tyrone Tracy, for a 5th-round draft pick, good vision, good quickness, moves the pile, has done a really good job. I think he's had 3 100 rushing yard games. Let the running game set the tone here. That'll give DeVito maybe, allow DeVito to get into a rhythm, just kind of, get a feel for the offense and how the defense is playing them. And then from there, you can start to open things up. You're going to have Malik Neighbors, who is probably going to go against, I would think, Dean, if he's healthy. I think he's your number 1 cornerback. So, get Malik Neighbors on some one-on-one deep shots. Wan'Dale Robinson, have him working underneath like he always does. And I think you're also going to see Jalen Hyatt, a guy who we didn't really see a whole lot of the first 10 games. Well, actually, I take that back. The first 9 games, we saw more of him in week 10 because Darius Slayton was injured. Darius Slayton is expected to be back. He was in the concussion protocol. Actually, he still is, but he's in the final stages. But I think you're going to see him potentially get some more reps and some more targets than what we have seen in the past. And then defensively, the Giants are getting back Kayvon Thibodeau, or at least they will be. Kayvon Thibodeau felt good. He told us today he feels good coming off, his wrist injury that he had, the surgery, and he expects to be back. So now the Giants have all of a sudden 3 productive pass rushers in their lineup. In Thibodeau, Brian Burns, and Azeez Ojulari, who's been a nice little surprise for them. So it'll be fun to see how defensive coordinator Shane Bowen mixes those guys together to get pressure on Baker Mayfield, because like any other quarterback, you pressure him, he's going to make a mistake. And the Giants need turnovers. They haven't had a whole lot of those. They are at a negative right now in the turnover ratio. They got to turn that negative into a plus.
Yeah, and Tristan Wirfs left the game against the 49ers with that knee injury. He was limited on Wednesday, but I believe Todd Bowles said that he was trending to be a game time decision. If Justin School is the starting left tackle, and now all of a sudden you have Kayvon Thibodeau coming back, that could create some problems. Justin School struggled a lot when Luke Gedeke went down earlier in the year, and he was playing on the right side. So now that opens up an opportunity for sure for the New York Giants and my wife's favorite NFL player, Kayvon Thibodeau, to cause some damage in the backfield for the Buccaneers. So it'll be, and then of course familiar face Brian Burns. You know, the Bucs dealt with him time and time again. The last time he played the Bucs, though, he threw a punch and got ejected from the game. So might have to watch that temper a little bit this time around.
James is great. Patricia is great. Check them out. Locked On Bucks, Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. NFC South Showdown, Tennessee Titans, Houston Texans. Tennessee, tough year for them. Houston locked in on that 4 seed right now and hoping to continue their momentum after a big primetime win over the Dallas Cowboys. So Tyler Rowland of Locked On Titans and John Hickman of Locked On Texans dive into if Tennessee can pull off the upset or if Houston's going to win this one.
Crossover Thursday is presented by Prize Picks. Download the app and use code LOCKEDONNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Tyler, keys to victory for the Tennessee Titans looks like what?
Well, number one, you got to stop the run. I think that if you let Joe Mixon run the football all over you, like happened against the Cowboys, you're cooked. There's no way. The only chance you have is to get the Texans in the 3rd and long. And even then, because they've been so good with explosive plays, it's going to be difficult to get stops. I just think the Titans are going to struggle. But you get them into 3rd and long, and then the Titans pass rush can do some things. So number one, the Titans have to stop the run, have to get Joe Mixon cold. Don't let him get hot. I think on the offensive side of the ball, the Titans have to use play action to attack the secondary. I think the only hope, the Titans aren't going to have 10, 12 play drives on the Texans. They need explosives. The Titans hit 8 explosive plays last week against the Vikings, and it should have been 10 if these plays weren't called back by a petty referee. And I know Texans fans are rolling their eyes at me, but trust me, even Vikings fans were saying the Titans got screwed in this one. Like, it was crazy. But anyways, the two big things, stop the run when you're on defense, set up 3rd and long for the Texans. Create explosive passing plays through play action against this Texans secondary, where you talked about the cornerback position. Look, I really like Jalen Petrie. I like the Texans defense overall. It's a good defense. But if you had to choose a place to attack it, it's the secondary. That's where I'm attacking. Not the linebackers, not the defensive line. That's not who I want to take advantage of. It's going to be difficult no matter who you go after. But I want to attack downfield against this Texans secondary and see if they can cover, especially if you can get Calvin Ridley off of Derek Stingley Jr., which would be fantastic. And I'm sure Brian Callahan is in the lab right now thinking of ways to do exactly that. So stop the run on defense, heavy play action on offense to create plays down the field, and then you can't lose the turnover battle. If the Titans lose the turnover battle on the road against a better football team, they are screwed. So that's the number one thing. If you're gonna have an upset, you got to win the turnover battle. It's the ultimate equalizer in the NFL.
And that's exactly where I wanted to start. For the Houston Texans, they got to create turnovers, and that's something that they've been able to do. 6 interceptions in the last 2 weeks. And if we look at the drop interceptions, could potentially be up to 10 in the last 2 weeks. And I think that
they dropped a bunch of them against the Cowboys. I felt like
every
time I turn around.
Derek Stingley alone, I think he dropped 3, caught 1, dropped 3. Kalen Bullock dropped 1. And so creating those turnovers will help with the field position battle, and that'll give Houston a short field to work with. And I think that this is a quarterback in Will Levis that will give you the opportunities to do so. You just got to take advantage. But I also will say that another key to victory, dominating up front. The offensive line were able to have a very good and balanced game against Dallas. 2 different defensive lines. Dallas D-line is a little bit light in the butt compared to Jeffrey Simmons and Big Sweat. So those are some monster of men that you're going to have to worry about and block. And so it's going to be a collective goal. You got to include the tight ends because I think that if you dominate up front, you give Joe Mixon the running lanes that he absolutely will need. And Joe Mixon only needs a little small room of light to maybe cut back and pick up extra yards. Then that's going to lead me to key to victory number 3. And that's what you said, play action passes. TJ was phenomenal, hit over 90% of his play action passes against the Dallas Cowboys. And if Joe Mixon is running well, that defense is going to be forced to kind of step up a little bit. And then that's where you'll see guys like a Dalton Schultz leak out, a Cade Stover leak out. The tight end group against Dallas did a very good job. I think 8 targets, caught 6 of them. Those guys, their roles are small, but they're big because that can allow this team to sustain drives. And also, of course, Tank Dell and John Mechie and the big name, Nico Collins, because they will want those shots down the field. And then additionally, Bobby, build off what you just did, man. I thought Bobby called the best game of his season against Dallas. And again, 2 totally different defenses, but you gotta, for Bobby, you gotta understand the personnel that you're going up against and know when to make those adjustments. And I thought that he did a very good job of that for the most part through 4 quarters. So those are all the key to victories. And I think my score prediction for this game is going to be another tight one. And Tennessee and Houston always plays each other close. I'm looking at a 23-20 type of game for the Houston Texans.
You know what's crazy, man? That is exactly what I am thinking as well. That literally, I make my little graphics every week that I use on the show, what my score prediction is. And right now, I do have Texans 23, Titans 20. I like the Titans plus the 8.5. I think this is close. The Titans are a better team than 2-8. Not much better. Not much better. But I think they're a little bit better than 2-8. Levis really screwed them early in the year with some of his turnovers. I think you made a great point about the tight ends and the running backs too, because the Titans are very susceptible over the middle of the field. Kenneth Murray is a disaster in coverage.
You do not like Kenneth Murray, man. I see him on your timeline every week.
Yeah, I hated that signing. And like, he makes these plays where he comes downhill and he hits a running back hard, or he'll blitz because he's a good blitzing linebacker and he'll get pressure on a quarterback. And Titans fans will be like, who only watch the game for 3 hours on Sunday and never watch the film. They're like, he's good. See, look, he's got tackles. Look at that play made. But when you watch the film and you see him get taken advantage of, like, if I'm the Texans and I'm a Texans fan and I play fantasy football or I gamble, Tank Dell. Huge props on Tank Dell.
Is this going to be a Tank Dell week?
Because he's going to be over the middle with that speed, and the Titans linebackers and their backup safety, aside from and even Amani Hooker isn't the fastest safety in the league as he gets older. So I really think the Texans can hit that play action over the middle of the field, take advantage of the middle of the field zone defense of the Titans. And the Titans run a lot of cover 4 and cover 4 man, where the outside cornerbacks have deep vertical responsibilities, and it really opens up the flats. You can hit little passes out into the flats to the running backs and to the tight ends and have them turn up field and get big yardage. So I think the tight ends and the running backs will be huge for the Texans, not only helping with the blocking against the Titans defensive line, but then taking advantage of the Titans deficiencies in defense. But I think 23-20 is very solid. Now, I will tell you this.
What you got?
I kind of smell a Titans upset in this one. Because the Texans just came off a really easy game. They came off a really easy game where they blew out the Cowboys. They're feeling good. They're feeling great. It's a division game, like you said, so it's always going to be a little bit closer. The Titans are playing better football than they played earlier in the season, and just sometimes these things happen. And I'll just say this. I think the Texans are a good team. I think they win the division. I think they win a playoff game. I do. But the Texans have not played their best football, and they are primed for a trap game loss. Like, they need a loss
I think
to shake
Houston
them
has
out
had
of
their
kind
trap
of
game loss. The Jets was a trap game loss, and I think that this is a desperate team.
It was,
but that was a 2-16. What was it? Lost 4 games straight or something along those lines. Aaron Rodgers just looking god awful. Then we saw what he did in the second half. Right. The Texans are a desperate team because they know they have the easiest part of their schedule right now. Dallas, Tennessee, Jacksonville. Right after that, you got Miami, you got Baltimore, you got Kansas City. Those last 2 teams are the cream of the crop. You don't get a chance to play the Pittsburgh Steelers.
They may be looking ahead, John. They may be classic look ahead.
But I say that to say they know and understand if we're gonna have a shot against those guys, we got to get the ball rolling right now. Monday night was a good stepping stone. Yeah. They will have a tough game against you guys, and I'm honestly hoping for a fight on the field. I just like good, nasty football.
And always something Dallas. Like that when the Titans and Texans play, man.
So I need that excitement and entertainment. But I think that this will be a game where they still settle in offensively to where we're not going to see CJ leave a game without a touchdown. I think he's going to throw his touchdown this week against Tennessee. And I think this will be the game where they just build off of what they were able to accomplish against the Dallas Cowboys, because there are some things that worked. You look at Laramie Tunsil, if he's not upfield engaging, the first play of the game for Houston was a 70-plus yard TD to Nico Collins.
And I needed that. I had some Nico Collins money, man. I needed that. I'm salty about it. I'm not happy with Laramie Tunsil, man. I'm not.
Yeah, the Texan fans and Andre Ware have not been happy with Laramie Tunsil, but like they're gonna figure it out. And I think this is just one of those games where Tennessee is gonna punch them in the mouth. Texans are gonna punch back, but they're gonna figure it out and they're gonna score some points and they're gonna win this game.
I could see the Titans scoring early. Like it could be like 13-10 Titans at halftime, and then the Texans end up winning 23-20. You know what I mean? Like something like that. The Texans are the better team, and the longer you play a football game, the more talent wins. It's a classic thing in all team sports. The longer it goes, that's why you don't want to go into overtime if you're an underdog and stuff like that, because the better team is eventually just going to win with the talent. But I do think it'll be a close game. That's why I like the Titans plus the 8.5, even if the Texans end up winning.
Be sure to check out John over at Locked On Texans and Tyler over at Locked On Titans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. One more game in the 1 p.m. slate to dive into, and that is the Miami Dolphins and the New England Patriots. Both teams having a rough year, but the Dolphins still clinging on to some playoff hope. So Kyle Krabs of Locked On Dolphins and Mike DeBate of Locked On Patriots take you through who could win this big AFC East matchup.
Okay, Mike, keys to victory in this game. What stands out the most to you as the things the Patriots have to achieve if they're going to come to Miami and get a win?
Well, again, I think it comes back to using pressure and making it count, Kyle. We talked about earlier how the Patriots have attempted to put pressure on quarterbacks, but they're not getting home. The Pats' quarterback pressure rate is 31.5, and their average time to pressure is 2.58 seconds. Now, conversely, when you look at Miami and Tua Tagovailoa's 6 starts, he's been pressured on 20.3% of his dropbacks, an average time to throw of 2.43 seconds. So if I'm the New England Patriots, you need to pay attention to both coverage and tackling, because that's going to be key. You have to find a balance between both. The coaching staff needs to adapt if their coverage schemes are not working, something they haven't done the last couple of weeks. I think they hear a lot of the noise coming from the fans and the media up here in New England, so I would look for them to be on alert to adjust when things aren't working their way. But they also have to remember that they do need to finish their tackles, and this is something that they're not doing, and a lot of teams are making them pay for it. So if you're going to apply pressure, you have to make it count. You can't have it come up empty and expect to beat the Miami Dolphins. They will absolutely decimate you, and they'll leave you in the lurch and it won't be pretty down in Miami Gardens this weekend. I think another key for the Patriots this week is they're going to have to attack Miami where they believe they might be a bit vulnerable. And you mentioned Kendall Fuller being out this week. This is a group that struggles to cover tight ends on occasion, and they had difficulty with Brock Bowers last week. He caught 13 passes for 126 yards. They did shut down the rest of the Vegas passing game, but they allowed a guy like Bowers to be able to hurt them. So if I'm the New England Patriots, I'm looking at both Hunter Henry and I'm looking at Austin Hooper as guys that could potentially get some yardage down the field or be a type of a threat if some of the wide receivers are simply not doing their job in New England, or if Drake's having difficulty shaking them free and throwing them open. So that's something that I would look for as well for the Patriots. And bottom line, if the Patriots are going to have any success at all in this game, they have to, one, protect the ball, and they have to limit their opponent's takeaways. That includes erroneous penalties, which the Patriots have not been able to do well. They were penalized 7 times last week for 45 yards. That cannot happen if they're going to attempt to get a victory on the road this weekend. So they need to do a much better job of protecting the ball, scheming it, and also being able to attack their opponents when they're weak. It sounds simple, but that's the way it's been for the past this year. It's the little things that have doomed them in some games that maybe they should have been better equipped to win.
Yeah, I look at this game for the Dolphins and the keys to victory that they have, and I look at, you mentioned attacking opponent where they're weak from a Patriots side of things, and the Patriots offensively this season come up short as far as their league standing in a couple of areas where the Dolphins defense actually ranks quite well, and that's third down and red zone. The Patriots currently rank 26th in the NFL with 35% conversion rate on third down. They are 46.9% touchdown percentage in the red zone. That is 29th in the NFL. The Dolphins have been a top 10 team defensively on third downs all season long. And that's despite the Raiders were almost unstoppable on third and fourth down. I think they only got 3 or 4 stops on like 16 opportunities on third and fourth downs in this past game. They didn't tackle well in front of the sticks. But the Dolphins ranked 10th in the NFL in third down percentage defensively at 35%. And they're giving up touchdowns on just 48% of their defensive trips into the red zone. That ranks 8th in the NFL. They have to keep that trend going against a team that has, across the course of their season thus far, struggled relative to league average. If they can do that, I think you'll see the same kind of script that unfolded with the Raiders and the Rams, where maybe those teams are both able to move the football. But the Dolphins kept the Rams out of the end zone entirely. They kicked 5 field goals in that game. And the Raiders had 2 possessions in the first half. The entire first half had effectively 2 possessions for each team. Miami gets a touchdown and a field goal. The Raiders kick 2 field goals. They go into halftime with a lead. So that's been part of the script, has been you may give up some yards, but don't break. And I think that's another thing this week when the field gets a little bit more compressed and things happen a little faster and there's more bodies in a tighter space. How do you choose to attack a rookie quarterback in that opportunity? And I think that's a big opportunity for Miami in this game. I do think they'll need to run the ball a little bit better than what they have from a negative runs perspective. The Dolphins are number 1 in the NFL in negative runs that have gone for at least -1 yard thus far this season. They're in the high 40s. I think there's only 2 other teams in the NFL that are at least over 40, but Miami with that top spot, those negative runs have really been a detriment. They've looked a lot better with some of their on-schedule stuff, but then they'll get a chunk gain, then they'll pass for a first down, and then it's 2nd and 12 because they lose 2 yards trying to get out on the edge. So whether this process for them includes Alec Ingold or not, that's a big point of emphasis, I think, for Miami. They have to start getting better at avoiding the minus runs. They do that in this game, and I think that it will bode well for their ability to, again, stay on schedule, be very clock-oriented. And I think the last thing that they need to do is they need to figure out what they need to do to get Chop Robinson to continue his strong stretch of play. He's been their one organic winner from a pass rush perspective. The last 3 weeks have been the best 3 games he's played in his rookie season. He's really starting to come on. There's been some chemistry with some twists and stunts and games. And if Cole Strange plays, and that's a new player that hasn't played that you're inserting back in, can you attack that with some gap exchanges and miscommunications? If it's not, the strongest pieces of your defense have still been Zach Sealer, Calais Campbell. Lean on those guys, the experience that they have. Try to get some wins, try to get some runs in Drake May's face, because Chop's the guy who's athletic enough to get him on the ground, but you got to get him some free looks at the quarterback for that to happen. So that's where my mind goes for keys to victory for the Dolphins.
Be sure to check out Kyle over at Locked On Dolphins. You can find Mike over at Locked On Patriots, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. That's all I have for the 1 p.m. slate, but don't go anywhere. We still have a lot to dive into. That 4 p.m. slate has some juicy matchups in it. Stay tuned. Going to have a lot coming your way on the Ultimate NFL pregame show. First, the show is brought to you by Game Time. There's so much hype and atmosphere when it comes to watching basketball live. We got celebrity sightings, the sound from the court and the feel of the crowd. For me, I'm a big Never Nuggets guy, so whenever the Nuggets are in the area here, I try to go as many times as I can. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks. It makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And Game Time has so many different types of events, concerts, shows, and more. It's not just sports over there. And for this Ravens and Chargers game, primetime Monday Night Football, Game Time Picks is the place to be. You can find super deals and other tiers of deals as well. And the app has so many great features such as Game Time Picks, seat views, lowest price guarantee, Game Time ticket coverage, and so much more. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms by getting create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON NFL, spelled LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. Who comes out on top between the Green Bay Packers and the San Francisco 49ers? I'm Kevin Ostreicher. This is the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show, taking you through everything you need to know leading up to game time. We're here in Week 12, and there are plenty of incredible matchups to dive into. The first of which is that Packers-49ers rivalry, which although they're not in division with each other, they've had plenty of historic matchups over the years. So Peter Bukowski of Locked On Packers, as well as Eric Crocker and Brian Peacock of Locked On 49ers, get you ready for everything you need to know for Sunday's action.
So Christian McCaffrey was not around for half the season. Had to go to Europe to see some specialists, maybe some doctors that he wouldn't be allowed to see in the United States. We don't know. We don't know what's going on there. But he came back, and the offense did not look like what we expected or what we knew it would look like last year. How healthy does he look to you, and how much better do you think he can get? Or is this just sort of the version of CMC that we're going to see for like the next month as he works back into real game shape?
I don't know. What do you think, Croc? I don't think he looks quite 100%. I think he's lacking a little bit of that explosive ability.
Juice, yeah.
The results haven't been great either. And to be honest with you, the results have been worse than they were running the football with Jordan Mason most of the year. Jordan Mason has barely been able to touch the ball since Christian McCaffrey's been back, which is definitely a Kyle Shanahan thing. And, Bobby Turner, running backs coach thing. And I think Bobby Turner's the one really in charge of who goes in and out of the game during the game. But, they might need to make a better plan pregame to have Christian McCaffrey spelled. He's made some amazing catches, and, clearly he's better in the passing game, but he's not quite right. And I think the biggest thing is, even a 90% Christian McCaffrey, you're going to put him out there as much as you can, right? But
it's better than most running backs, for sure.
Right. And the big thing is that 49ers fans, and I think the idea was, Christian McCaffrey's going to come back, and whatever's been kind of weird, he'll Band-Aid all of it and fix it all. And that hasn't happened. And I think that's clear.
Yeah, it hasn't been great. Last game he was, very productive, and he's been productive for the most part, especially through the air. I think that's where they've kind of gotten more of their bang for their buck. The rushing yards, the yards per carry, not super high like you're used to seeing from Christian McCaffrey, still kind of hovering around 4 yards per carry in his last game. But Kyle Shanahan has proven time and time again, if he has Christian McCaffrey healthy, he's going to be the factor back and get the bulk of the carries. So they have two other running backs. Early in the season, a lot of people got a chance to meet Jordan Mason, and we saw how well he ran. And he's earning nicknames, and people are calling him Baby Marshawn Lynch. And he was leading the league in rushing at one point through the first quarter of the season, and then he got banged up. So then the 49ers went with Isaac Guerrero, a rookie, and he's ripping off big runs. Peacock and I have talked about it, and we would like to see Kyle Shanahan figure out a way to utilize all three guys to their skill sets. And Guerrero, he's more of a one-cut explosive back. Jordan Mason, he's more of your power back. And Christian McCaffrey obviously gives you a little bit of everything, but gives you even more in the passing game. Mm-hmm. Is there a way that you can kind of use these three guys to create the ultimate run game? And you'd assume so, but Kyle Shanahan, he's going to go with what he knows, and that's to play one running back and run him as much as possible until that guy gets hurt.
I think the key for Green Bay in this game is they have been a pretty good run defense most of the year, or at least an average. Pretty good by Green Bay standards means like average. And that's been what they are this year. But as a too high defense, they are a bad run defense. And the thing that is different about this 49ers team to me right now is that without Brandon Ayuk, they just do not threaten you vertically the same way that they used to. And I think you're going to see the Packers play more single high. That will help them stop the run. You're essentially daring Brock Purdy. We dare you to beat us deep with Juwan Jennings and Deebo Samuel. And I think George Kittle could be the guy that they try and do that with. Some of those big play action shots. We think of that 2019 game, either one where the 49ers beat the brakes off the Packers. That's Shanahan staple where Kittle runs the cover 3 beater, where he runs the big post corner. And it's just like wide ass open every time. Certainly against Green Bay, against Kevin King, I believe, who was in coverage on the play that I'm thinking of. And so like, I think that's going to be the plan. It's interesting to me that this is a 49ers team that is facing a 49ers-ish defense. Jeff Hafley was the 49ers defensive backs coached with Kyle Shanahan. In fact, it was Kyle Shanahan who brought Haf to Cleveland in the first place and then brought him to the 49ers because he thought enough about him there. Brian, you mentioned all these teams running the Shanahan offense and the answers that they have. Well, you're talking about Robert Saleh and Jeff Hafley were there for the creation of the Shanahan offense. And so I wonder how that impacts this game. If the Packers cannot allow big plays, I think they will win because this team has had some issues generating those explosives. And we know the value of those explosive plays in scoring touchdowns. It's huge.
Yeah. And you mentioned it there with the downfield stuff. And it did feel like, especially watching Niners Seahawks last week, and at the end of the game, it felt like, where's this big play going to come from? You need Christian McCaffrey to break off some big plays. Debo has had a lack of those really big catch and runs. The Niners went from like best to worst.
He's not a vertical threat. It's got to be a slant that he takes for 70, right, which we know he can do.
Exactly. And so you're like, where's that big play going to come from? And it kind of doesn't happen. And then you go watch Sunday Night Football right after that. And you've got Burrow throwing bombs and you got Justin Herbert laser shows. You're like, yeah, that looks completely different. Okay. And the Niners definitely lack an explosive element on offense too right now. And by the way, you mentioned Saleh, Bob Saleh on the other sideline, just doing Shanahan dirty. Does that make you want to fight more? If you go to the bar and you see your ex-girlfriend across, does that make you want to fight more? Or does it make you want to pack it up and go home? I think we're going to find that out on Sunday.
Croc, what kind of, like, is there a little advantage? We heard Matt LaFleur said there was a play that they ran against the Bears that Saleh said, hey, you know that concept, that because he knows the offensive playbook too. That's the cool thing, is he's actually working with the Packers offense on, hey, these are how teams are going to attack you. And so, do you think there's a little bit of inside info that can benefit Green Bay in this game?
Definitely. Knowing tendencies is the biggest thing in football. If you line up and hey, in these situations, these are the plays that they like, right? And then as soon as they snap the ball, you'll kind of see how that's playing out. And you'll know out of those couple options, it's this one because he went this way. And now everybody's playing a step faster. The NFL, and I remember my time getting there, everybody says the NFL is faster. NFL is faster. But not because everybody's fast. The NFL is faster because everybody is a step ahead. And if you're a step behind, then you're just going to get lost in the sauce. But when you know a team inside and out, and you know how they think, how this coach, how he likes to do things, that definitely gives you an advantage. Now, you still have to stop them, right? Kyle Shanahan is going to know Jeff Hafley's defense. Hell, Kyle Shanahan has faced a lot of defenses that he's seen a lot of defenses multiple times, and still they kick his butt, right? So you can know what someone's going to do. You have to have the plan, and then it's on the players to execute. And again, that goes back to what I said in the first segment. The 49ers, when it matters most, have been bad at executing. And if they're going to turn this around and beat Green Bay in Green Bay, the 49ers have to execute better when it matters most. Not in the first half. We scored 20 points and you're up 10 points. Not then, but when Green Bay starts to make that inevitable move towards the 49ers, who's going to make that play to stop the bleeding? 49ers have missed that throughout most of the season.
You can get into that paralyzing psychological loop too, of like, well, he knows that I know that he knows. And then, but he knows that I know that he knows that he knows that I knows. And so it's like one of those things where it's like, are you going to outthink yourself, or are you just going to do the things that you are really good at? It's a fascinating decision-making process that these teams are going to have to endeavor here on Sunday. Do we want to throw out some predictions? What do we got here?
I want to hear your predictions, because my listeners at Locked On 49ers need reasons to be mad at you, Peter, and I know what team you're going to predict is going to win.
I think I've behaved on this show today, Brian. Like,
I think they're going to be mad at us because, at least I know myself. We're coming off as vulnerable to Peter Bukowski. He's a fan favorite of the 49ers. So I don't know how much they're going to like that.
Well, I'll start then, because the lack of confidence is why the 49ers are going to win this game. Getting points, 49ers against the Packers, automatic. Take the points for the 49ers to go to Lambeau and beat the Green Bay Packers, and Niners backs up against the wall. This is a playoff game. Kyle Shanahan's going to come up with something extra too. Robert Saleh, Matt LaFleur on the other side, Jeff Hafley. He's going to come up with something. What is going to be? I don't know. We're going to find out Sunday. But Niners take the points. The NFL is chaos. Just when you think you know what a team is, they flip the switch. Niners just flipping the switch later than we thought this year.
God, I just hate that seems so right. It's just so annoying that seems so right to me. So here's the thing. The Packers have beat the 49ers 4 straight times in the regular season. And 49ers fans are going to go, beat us when it matters. And I'll say, okay. It matters a little bit more now as a regular season game. And I do think it is a big deal for the Packers. They have been very good when they get to see teams a second time. I know they haven't seen the 49ers a second time, but this is a team they did just play in January. And they have been so close all year. In 3 losses, guys, the Packers have gone over 400 yards of offense in all 3. Over 6.3 yards per play in all 3. It has been the red zone. To Croc's point, they have been bad in the red zone. If they score in the red zone in this game, they will win. And if they don't, if they kick field goals or they have to go for it on 4th down, they'll lose. And that's a little bit of a cop-out, but that's the truth. And so I think they'll be able to move the ball on this 49ers defense. I think you're going to see them in 2 tight end personnel groupings. You're going to see them in heavy personnel. Even from the gun, we saw that. Hey, split Tucker Kraft out and Ben Sims. Or, hey, let's play in pony personnel, 2 running backs on the field, get those linebackers involved. It's going to be Devondre Campbell better get ready to learn option routes because they're coming at him. And so I like the Packers in this game, but it's going to be a tight one. It's going to be annoying, and it's going to come down, I think, at the end to a field goal, much like the playoff game. And I think Brandon McManus is going to hit it and either clinch the game or win the game for the Packers. Croc, what you got?
I'm going to go with Peacock, man. And again, I feel vulnerable with the 49ers right now. It hasn't been great, but like you said early on, at some point, it's like, okay, we've been waiting. It's got to click. Why not click against the Green Bay Packers? I'm not super confident. You're going on the road. You're playing against Green Bay. And I think Green Bay is kind of looking for that game to where everything is just clicking for them. They haven't had that. We saw them have that in the second half of last season. But for the 49ers right now, can it click? And they got the guys, they got the players, got a little healthier. You get guys like, CMC back. Now you got George Kittle coming back now. Hopefully, and we'll see what happens with Drake Greenlaw. Hopefully he's on the field. But 49ers getting a little healthier. You get Travarius Ward back. I think this is the time for the 49ers to say, you know what? We got to play like who we think we are. And we're going to have to do it on the road. And what better time to do it to make a statement against Peter Bukowski's Green Bay Packers?
And I just got to say, the craziest thing maybe that, Peter, you've ever said is that this game's going to end because of clean special teams play.
Yeah, you're right. It won't. That's impossible. The Packers, remember, Keyshawn Nixon fumbled a kickoff return. He looked like he was going to have a chance to score, fumbled it. The Packers recovered it. But then Anders Carlson missed the field goal, which is the reason why at the end that was a drive to try and win to force overtime instead of win. Tough look. I hope it's not a special teams meltdown for everyone's sake, because the 49ers think it's special teams too. So it's just one of those like, hey, thanks for being just as crappy at this thing than we are. Let's hope there's no special teams mistakes for everyone's sake.
Be sure to check out Peter over at Locked On Packers and Brian and Eric over at Locked On 49ers, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Next up, we got an NFC West matchup. Arizona Cardinals, their high-flying offense, much better season than anticipated than the Seattle Seahawks, with first-year head coach Mike Macdonald have been certainly going through some ups and downs this season. So Alex Clancy of Locked On Cardinals, Corbin Smith of Locked On Seahawks, talk about who wins this prime NFC West matchup.
Welcome back to Crossover Thursday here. Locked On Seahawks, Locked On Cardinals. I'm Corbin Smith. Glad to be teaming up with Alex Clancy of Locked On Cardinals. And we've got this massive game coming up, Week 12, first place on the line. I still can't believe I'm saying that because Seattle lost 5 out of 6 at one point. But they're 5-5, and they are only a game behind the Arizona Cardinals. They win this game on Sunday. They are in first place in the NFC West. It's been a crazy division so far. Alex, looking towards this game, the Cardinals have won 4 straight. They're coming off a bye week. They're going to be fresh. They've got as much momentum as any team in the NFL, but you're still coming to Seattle. The Seahawks are coming off a big win. What do you view, as the keys to victory for the Cardinals to keep this thing rolling at Lumen Field?
So the first one's kind of a mindset thing. It's not like the Cardinals need to instill dominance if they want to really solidify themselves. It's a perfect test for both teams. One, to flip the script, Seattle to emerge as the NFC West leader through 12 weeks, and for the Cardinals to really be like, listen, This isn't 2021. It's not 7-0, 10-2, and then not winning the division that year after having a 3-game lead with like 4 to play when Cliff Kingsbury was the head coach. It's a new team. It's a new organization. They're the Detroit Lions light. This is something that the Cardinals absolutely must do if they want to continue the momentum. Getting a win at Lumen Field is something that is so much bigger than just one game to maintain the lead in the NFC West. Now, how do they do it is they need to exploit the weaknesses of the Seattle Seahawks. And Corbin, you said it first, running the ball is how all of this starts and finishes. That's one of the ways the Cardinals can dominate. And they've shown that way, running for over 200 yards in one of the wins recently, over 150 yards in the majority of games this season without Kyler Murray. But really, the game plan needs to be keeping the Seahawks guessing and exploiting weakness. What maybe you're going to box Kyler Murray eat you alive. You're going to have a light box. James Conner, Trey Benson, and Kyler Murray are going to eat you alive. So really what it comes down to is proof of concept from what we've seen the last 4 weeks, doing it on the road, division opponent, getting your 5th win in a row and solidifying yourself as a team to beat in the NFC playoffs this year, not just 2025.
When I look from a Seahawks perspective, particularly on the offensive side of the football, to me, this is a game the offense has got to step up because that's still the one thing that is holding this team back. And I'm not blaming Geno Smith. I mean, there's a lot of people out there, well, he's got 11 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. Look, half of those interceptions were not his fault. The one he threw on Sunday was a bad throw, but his offensive line has let him down. He hasn't had a run game to complement him for most of the season. But it feels like with the offensive line, the way they're playing, with Abe Lucas and Timmy being in there, that this is an opportunity, especially against the Cardinals front line, as you mentioned. They have not done a great job of creating pressure. This should be a game where Geno Smith is able to have some time back there. You got to be able to pick up the blitzes, though. That's going to be the key. You have to be able to, as an offensive line, be able to communicate, okay, that corner's, Garrett Williams is coming on this play. And make sure you've got the communication on point. And you got a new center, so that is going to be a question mark. Is he going to be able to handle it? 49ers didn't blitz very much in the last game. Arizona is going to send blitzers. They are going to mix in some exotic sim pressures. They are going to do those things. So the offensive line communication is going to be key because I think if they're able to pick those things up consistently and Geno Smith has time to throw, I have great respect for the safeties that the Cardinals have. The young corners are playing really well. But I'm still taking DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith-Njigba, and Tyler Lockett against those corners. If Geno Smith has time to get the ball downfield, especially at home, I'm taking those matchups all day long. So to me, it's the communication from that offensive line. And I think that also going to help out with your run game. They're going to have to be able to mix in some run to be able to set those opportunities up for Geno Smith. You look at Arizona from a defensive standpoint and how they have to deal with this Seahawks offense. What stands out to you from a keys to victory standpoint?
Secondary, it's going to be the same thing. Jackson Smith-Njigba is going to be a problem. I wonder if they're going to put Garrett Williams on him, who can play in the slot. He's been the best corner that the Cardinals have had. I really think that, and I've said this for the entirety of the season, that the Cardinals need to cut the head off the snake. You got to get to the quarterback. Because regardless of how good the secondary has been, I don't trust that as much as I trust, the offense being able to produce. So getting to Geno Smith, maybe making him throw a duck or two, being opportunistic, that's the biggest key for the Cardinals, because while the secondary is played out of their shoes, I don't know if there's an expiration date on that when you go up against an offense that is as potent on paper as the Seahawks have. So, that's for me. Garrett Williams has shown he's a top 5, analytic cover corner in the league this year. I just don't know if they're able to withstand the strength headed monster receiver. I don't know if Noah Fant's going to play, but he's a terror in the middle of the field. And then you have the 2 running backs. It's going to be a tough day, but getting to Geno Smith is key number 1.
From a Seahawks defensive perspective, anytime you play the Cardinals, to me, it revolves around the quarterback. And one thing that Pete Carroll did really well, he always seemed to have good game plans for being able to handle Kyler Murray with his mobility and being able to create some pressure. Is Mike McDonald going to be able to do that? He's been more in his bag the last couple of weeks. I will say he has been doing a better job getting his players in position, maximizing their strengths, but dealing with a mobile quarterback. Is he going to be able to do that? Because I think if you can take away that running element for Kyler Murray and you can find a way to bottle up what you've done the last 2 weeks, and the run defense in general is better. You trust your secondary, even against a really potent Cardinals passing game. You trust those guys because, look, Devin Witherspoon, Reek Woolen, and even Josh Jobe, like that's as good of a 3 cornerback group as you're going to see in the NFL. Make them try to beat your strength. And I think that's going to be the key. It all boils down to the run defense and making sure Kyler Murray doesn't kill you with his legs either. And then say, hey, Kyler Murray, you beat our corners. We're going to put that in your corner here. You got to beat Devin Witherspoon, Reek Woolen, Josh Jobe. Our safeties are good too. You have to beat our secondary in this game, and our pass rushers get the opportunity to get after you. That is going to be the key to me. The Seahawks are ironically a 1.5-point favorite in this game at home, even though it feels like it's been 7 years since they won at Lumen Field. The Seahawks are the favorite. Going into this game, the Cardinals are coming off the bye. They won 4 straight. I expected that the Cardinals were going to be the favorite on the road in this game. But, Alex, when you look at that spread and the Cardinals coming to Lumen Field and just how big this game is for both teams, what is your sense as far as the Cardinals against that spread this week?
I'll take the points. You always take a little juice. I think really what this is going to come down to, for including the over-under, is who can score touchdowns and who's going to hold the opposition to field goals. The Cardinals have done a fantastic job holding opposition to field goals. They held Justin Herbert's offense to 6 field goals or 5 field goals, and they had 400 total yards on Monday Night Football in week 7, I think. Week 7. They've been a great bend-don't-break team who's, not giving up a whole bunch of touchdowns inside the red zone. I think that's what it's going to come down to. And the Cardinals need to get 6 instead of settle for 3. They've been one of the best teams goal to go scoring touchdowns. And I think if that trend continues, the Cardinals will get a dub. But it really is going to come down to who can execute inside the red zone, inside goal to go. Touchdowns or field goals will tell the story.
And I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it's the same thing for the Seahawks, who have the last couple of weeks they've been terrible in the red zone. Now, they took a big step forward in this game against San Francisco. They were much more effective when they did get in the red zone. They were able to finish drives. Can you do that against the Arizona Cardinals? They have been so good this year at turning 6 into 3 or 0 even. You have to finish drives. So it's kind of one of those something's got to give type matchups, which usually means you have a pretty tight game on your hands. And I'm expecting that this is going to be a close one.
Corbin is great. Be sure to check him out over at Locked On Seahawks. Alex is great. Be sure to check him out over at Locked On Cardinals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Only 3 games in the 4 p.m. slate in Week 12, the last being a divisional matchup as well. AFC West style, the Denver Broncos and the Las Vegas Raiders. So we have Cody Rourke of Locked On Broncos, your boy Q of Locked On Raiders, taking me through if the Broncos can get the job done or if the Raiders can pull the upset.
Today's Crossover Thursday Keys to Victory is brought to you by our friends over there at PrizePicks. Download the app and use code LOCKEDONNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Speaking of Keys to Victory, Hugh, let's break down this matchup into what is it that these teams have to do, right? We always get into the cliches like, okay, you got to run the ball effectively. You got to have a better turnover differential. We could talk about the what's, but let's talk about the hows here. For the Las Vegas Raiders at 2-8, they're still finding ways to compete, even though things aren't going their way. In the end result, you mentioned injuries play a factor into it. For a Raiders team and for a Broncos team, anytime these AFC West teams match up, I even think it's a great example. Look at the AFC North. The Baltimore Ravens earlier this year, they lost to the 1-6 Cleveland Browns. Records don't matter. You threw that out there earlier. For the Las Vegas Raiders to come out with a victory on Sunday and catch the Broncos as they're trying to get back into the postseason with a quarterback they believe is the guy, what is it and how can the Raiders win this game?
Well, first, I'm going to start with the defense because the defense was supposed to be the ones that did the heavy lifting when the season started. And for one reason or the other, a lot of it has to do with injuries. The defense just hasn't been there. But I do think that they need to create a couple turnovers. They just have not created very many turnovers this season. Their turnover differential is like -15. I mean, it's just about the worst in the league. It's not very good. So they've got to find a way to get their hands on the ball, maybe give their offense a short field and really set them up for success and have an opportunity to be successful, which means that they're going to have to get pressure on the quarterback. So you're going to need to see Max Crosby be the boogeyman, as you mentioned in reference before. He's been that guy. He's got to be that guy, right? And then there's got to have other help from guys like Tyree Wilson, John Jenkins, Adam Butler, those guys along the defensive line. They're going to have to get all kind of help there. Again, we'll see who's going to be out there for the secondary. But, when you don't have all your guys in the secondary, all your top guys, your starters, that means that the defensive line has even more strain on them, right? They've got to go in there and really make things a little bit easier, get to the quarterback a little bit quicker, make them get that ball to their hands and cause a mistake to be made, similar to what the Raiders did against Denver in week 5 when Minshew made a mistake. Patrick Surtain made him pay for it. Somebody's got to make Bo Nix pay for a mistake. If he creates a mistake or, there's a mistake forced, they've got to be able to capitalize that on and take advantage of it. So, I mean, the first and foremost, I just think that the defense is going to have to find a way to give their offense some short fields, create a couple turnovers, get some pressure on the quarterback. They've got to wreak havoc. And I think that you said it best. Max Crosby has to be the boogeyman. And on the flip side of things, Cody, Gardner Minshew just can't turn the ball over. Gardner Minshew has turned the ball over quite a bit, right? And there's a lot of Raider fans that are questioning why he's still the starting quarterback. Why didn't they go to Desmond Ridder, who he's nothing to write home about either? I mean, he was on the Cardinals practice squad when the Raiders got him. Aiden O'Connell's on IR, so there's not a lot of options, man. There's not a lot of flavors at the ice cream shop, right? I mean, it's basically vanilla or chocolate or other, right? And so it's not a whole plethora of different flavors to choose from. Minshew's got to take care of the ball. He really does. Brock Bowers is obviously the best playmaker for the Raiders. You got to get him involved early and keep him involved like they were last week when he had 13 catches. Scott Turner is the new OC. He's their interim OC. He's got familiarity, and the offense looked a lot better against Miami, but they weren't able to capitalize in the red zone. So if they get down to the red zone, don't throw a pick six. Right, you need to get into the end zone, score touchdowns, but you have to capitalize when you're in the red zone as well. So I think it really has come down to ball security. The Raiders defense has to take away the ball, and the Raiders offense has to secure the ball and make sure they hold on to it. I think those are going to be probably the two biggest things that the Raiders have to do to give themselves a chance to win this game on Sunday. When you're looking at the Broncos, though, what do they have to do or continue to do what they've been doing to get the victories that they've been stacking up?
Yeah, I always believe this, Q. In the world of football, when you play an opponent once and, you find a way to win or however it may be, I always feel like regardless, it's hard to beat that same team twice, right? You can't, you can do some of the same things that you had success with, but what is it that you're going to change? Because the Raiders, at least defensively, when they're going against the Broncos offense, they may say like, all right, hey, the first time we played these guys, this didn't work out well. Here's what we could have done better. Here's going to be our game plan, our emphasis here. And you always try to ask yourself, okay, hey, if we play these guys again, what would we do differently? Well, I think in that situation, we'll start with the Broncos defense against that Raiders offense and Gardner Minshew. And really, I remember that first drive that ended up Brock Bowers having a big time touchdown catch and run against PJ Locke. I remember there was a 3rd and 9 play where Gardner Minshew, he used his legs to pick up a first down, right? You extend drives, you sustain it. And you mentioned it too with, the new offense approach that they had there with Scott Turner. The Broncos didn't go against Scott Turner in that first game. So it's like, how are they going to game plan from, okay, hey, here's what we had success with in that week 5 matchup, but here's what they're doing now. Here's the different wrinkles that they're adding into the mix here. That I think is going to be a little challenge. I'm excited to see how that's going to kind of play out here. I think one of the bigger keys is getting off the field on 3rd down. Denver, I mean, granted, it was against Kansas City. Kansas City is the best 3rd down offense in all of football. And Denver, I mean, they did a really good job on a handful of plays, but then it's just like, hey, 3rd and 13, Mahomes scrambles, picks it up. He does that against everybody. So you have to have better 3rd down numbers. The Broncos did that this past week against the Atlanta Falcons. I believe held them to 4 of 13 in that game. Kirk Cousins and that high-powered offense that has the capability of scoring. But now it's like, all right, hey, limit the explosives here from Brock Bowers. Look, if Amir Abdullah is going to start at running back, the emphasis first is going to be, hey, come out and stop the run, right? Because the run game opens things up in the passing game for any offense that you have there. So the emphasis is going to be, hey, come out and stop the run. It doesn't matter if it's Zamir White, Alexander Madison, if these guys somehow find a way to be healthy, or if it's Amir Abdullah, you got to find a way to stop the run first, and then find yourself in manageable 2nd down situations, manageable 3rd and mediums, 3rd and longs, and then you can trust your technique and you kind of pin your ears back a little bit. I think that's going to be a big key here for the Broncos defense, those 3rd down numbers specifically. Nick Bonito has been on a tear from the sack production there, and can he get a sack here this week and extend that and close the gap there on Trey Hendrickson, who has 11.5 in the league right now? That's going to be a key to watch. I would say another thing here, if we're going to shift gears here to the offensive side, especially for Bo Nix and the Broncos offense, certainly the Raiders defense, they're watching what they're doing. The passing game for Bo and the offense in Denver has certainly evolved a little bit. You got Cortland Sutton now as the primary guy. I think he really started to get going in that Raiders game specifically with a couple of big catches. But then it's like, all right, now you got Devon Vele. Josh Reynolds could return into the lineup. They're using Marvin Mims in an entirely different role than they had early on in the season. I mean, he's getting some reps at receiver, but he's lining up in the backfield as a running back. He's a motion guy. And so they're using him as a little bit of a weaponized feature. And then you get rookie Troy Franklin, who's also making plays as well. But then in the run game, the Denver hasn't had Q. They haven't had a consistent 100-yard. They haven't had a 100-yard rusher from one specific player. They've amassed over 100 yards of rushing production spread out between guys like Bo Nix, Javonte Williams, Jaleel McLaughlin, and even rookie Audric Estime is now getting a little bit more involved. We asked Sean Payton this week about the running back rotation because there really is no clear one at this point.
Right.
And he says, that's the $6 million question. He says, this is hard for us to figure out. So they are going to use Javonte. They are going to use Jaleel, who's a change of pace speed back. And then they're starting to sprinkle in a little bit more Audric Estime, who's a big body, bulky guy. He reminds me of Doug Martin a little bit here, Q. He's big.
Okay.
He's got huge biceps.
Yeah.
He's almost as tall as me. He might even be an inch shorter than me at this point. But, man, he's hard to bring down there. So they're really going to try to get the run game going because that was something they really couldn't do against the Raiders in that first matchup. It was, hey, we got to pass and convert some drives here on third down through the air. You know, the run game is the Raiders like, hey, we want you to throw the football. We're going to play zone coverage, keep everything in front, rally and tackle, but we want you to throw the football. Now it's about balance. That's where the Broncos are really trying to find it. And I feel like that's going to be a major emphasis for them this weekend against the Raiders. You have to get the run game going to a point where, hey, it's keeping you on the field a little bit longer and finding a way to wear down Max Crosby. Like, keep Max Crosby on the field for quite some time. Look, he's going to play with a high motor, but keep him on the field. You know, especially if your offense can find a way to end with points and score in the red zone, which they've done a really good job at doing. That right there, I think, can be a difference maker for them. And I think that's if the Broncos are going to find a way to win on the road and snap that losing streak against the Raiders. They haven't won on the road against the Raiders since they were in Oakland. So it's been a while. Yeah. It's been a minute. That could change this week, but I know the Broncos, they're not overlooking the Raiders. This could be a trap game on paper, and I know the players are wanting to avoid that, but Denver has to achieve those things if they're going to win here on Sunday.
Well, I'll tell you what, man, the Raiders have struggled to stop the run consistently this year. So, I mean, if the Broncos are going to lean on the run game and try to be balanced, that's a good recipe. And, you know, you mentioned getting off the field on third down, and that's such a huge key for the Raiders as well. Last week against Miami, man, they never forced a punt. Not one punt. Oof. Right, exactly. Miami was 8 for 12 on third down and 2 for 2 on fourth down. Never one time did they punt the ball. So that tells you right there, that was one of my big hangups. Like, wait, you got to find a way to get off the field. Even on 3rd and 20, they had like a holding penalty, or 3rd and 9, then they had a illegal contact penalty. You know, even when they did stop them, they didn't because of a penalty. So they've got to find a way to do that. That's going to be a huge key, obviously, for both teams, getting off the field on third down. And the Raiders haven't ran the ball very well at all this season. They had one game where they went to 152 yards. That was week 4 against Cleveland. And that was really a couple of their running backs or their wide receivers, I should say, got loose in the running game, not really their running backs. So that's been a big bugaboo for Antonio Pierce and the Raiders. They just haven't had a consistent run game. So the run game is going to be important on both sides of the ball for both teams, and getting off the field on third down is clearly going to be very important for both teams as well.
Be sure to check out Cody over at Locked On Broncos and Q over at Locked On Raiders, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Coming up, we have a great slate of primetime games, 2 of them that you will not want to miss. So be sure to stay tuned. Plenty to get to on the Ultimate NFL pregame show. First, this show is sponsored by Bilt. With the seasons changing, I'm already dreaming of a warm weather getaway. I love using points for travel, and I'm always looking for ways to earn more to book my next flight. Here's a life hack for you. Bilt lets you earn points on rent payments and redeem them towards flights, hotels, and a lot more. One of your biggest investments should get you more than just a roof over your head. Let me explain. There's no cost to join Bilt, and as a member, you'll earn valuable points on rent and on your everyday spending. Bilt points can be transferred to your favorite hotels and airlines, and even the ones you haven't heard of. There are over 500 airlines and 700,000 hotels and properties around the world you can redeem your Bilt point towards. Points can also be redeemed towards a future rent payment and unique experiences that only Bilt members can access. So if you're not earning points on rent, my question is, why not? Start earning points on rent you're already paying by going to joinbilt.com/LockedOnNFL. That's joinbilt.com/LockedOnNFL. Make sure to use our URL so they know we sent you. Joinbilt.com/LockedOnNFL to start earning points on your rent payments today. Ultimate NFL pregame show, week 12. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you, breaking down everything you need to know leading up to game time. We've talked about the 1 p.m. slate. We've talked about the 4 o'clock slate. Let's get into some prime time action. Starting off, the Los Angeles Rams and the Philadelphia Eagles. Two NFC teams, and while the Eagles have certainly looked pretty good over the last couple of weeks, the Rams will be trying to play spoiler. So Louis DiBiase of Locked On Eagles and Doug McCain of Locked On Rams talk keys to victory, key storylines, and so much more.
Welcome back to this crossover edition of Locked On Rams and Locked On Eagles. So the way you kind of look at this one playing out, I mean, this Eagles team is on a heater. This Rams team is coming off a big road win against the Patriots where Matthew Stafford really had his best game of the year, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, had gone 6 straight games with an interception. Sometimes this season with Matthew Stafford, it has been frustrating, and there has been some ups and downs, but I think the argument is his biggest weapons, his best playmakers, they weren't there. The offensive line, they dealt with issues all season long on the injury front. I think that this is the time of year where a veteran like Matthew Stafford sees the light at the end of the tunnel. He knows that he needs to play his best ball to get this team to the playoffs. I think we see another really strong performance from Matthew Stafford. I'm not here to say that the Rams are going to win. I'm not ready to throw that out there, but I do think that the Rams are going to be in this game in the fourth quarter.
No, I completely agree. I think the Rams are one of the more underrated teams in football, and I was a big fan of their roster heading into the season, and I think injuries have really derailed it. And I think for the Eagles, another motivating factor here is I don't think you want to play Matt Stafford in the first round of the playoffs. When you start looking at like who you want to play in the first round, I think that's the one team that I kind of hope doesn't get in, right? Or maybe they win the division, so you don't have to worry about that being the first matchup. So that's another reason you might want to win this game and keep the Rams down, because Matt Stafford, to me, is still a top 3 quarterback in this conference. I think they're going to be in it the entire game. I think it's going to be close. The Eagles right now, according to FanDuel, are 2.5-point favorites. I think they will cover that, and they'll take care of business and win this game in Los Angeles. But yeah, absolutely. I think it's going to be a one-score game, and it's going to be a fun chess match between two of the best quarterbacks in the conference and two of the best offensive and defensive minds in the league.
Certainly, and I also want to kind of highlight some of these rookies because for the Rams, Jared Verse has been a monster this season. When you look at sacks, you look at pressures, he's the odds-on favorite. He's going to run away with the Defensive Rookie of the Year award.
Yep.
And then you got Braden Fisk, who had a monster game against the Patriots. He's been continuing to get better, and I think that everything really clicked into place mid-season, the game kind of slowing down for him. They really hit on these two guys. And then you got Cooper DeJean. You got some players for the Eagles that have really had a great start to their careers in the NFL, and I feel like this Eagles team really needed that in year one.
Oh, desperately, yeah. And Quinyon Mitchell in the first round has been...
Yeah, Quinyon Mitchell's a beast.
I can't believe he fell to them, and they didn't even need to trade up. It's unreal how good he has been. So, yeah, I think both teams have hit their first 2 picks out of the park, and they needed it. I think both teams, it's really interesting to see kind of the lifespan of their defenses, where they had a lot of veterans, stars, high-paid players, and then that era kind of ended, and they had to adjust and draft really well. And I think both teams have done a really good job of that. I think LA more so up front, even though I really like the Cam Kitchens pick as well. But I think the Eagles, they needed really to get younger in the secondary. They were old and slow and couldn't tackle in the defensive backfield last year. And Howie Roseman normally doesn't like to draft corners early in the draft. This was the first time he took a corner in the first or second round in 7 years, and he's only done it one other time in 15 years. So it was a much-needed move. Mitchell and DeJean have been great. But yeah, for the Rams too, like the Eagles have a really good offensive line, but they got to take this young Rams front seriously. Not just them, but a couple second-year players as well. Byron Young, Kobe Turner. That's going to be a fun, Doug, like a strength-on-strength matchup as the Eagles front their offensive line against that Rams pass rush.
Yeah, and that's the big difference between this team. Of course, you can't fill Aaron Donald's shoes as a one-of-one player. He's never coming back. But what you can do is in the aggregate, and you can have players like Kobe Turner getting pressure, and guys like Bobby Brown have been effective in the run game. Byron Young, second-year edge rusher. Michael Hoyt, who kind of just doesn't make sense. I mean, he's listed as 310. He's not 310, but he's a big dude that has success on the edge as well. And this team has been able to get pressure. This team, since their bye week, have been one of the better defenses in the NFL. Really, their weakness is the the secondary and limiting big plays as well. I mean, that's kind of the area where you look at the Eagles, you look at every single level, you see a lot of quality, whereas the Rams, it's their strong suit is the defensive line. It's getting pressure, and then the linebacker play against little crossing routes, little mesh routes, they can struggle from that standpoint. The safety play, you mentioned Kinchins. I mean, guys like Cam Curl, the safety play has definitely been up to par, but it's those boundary corners and some of those kind of crossing routes, those dig routes that they struggle with at times.
Yeah, Doug, that is the mismatch I'm looking at for the Eagles. Last week I said against Washington, the blueprint was run the ball against the Commanders' defense. That's how the Eagles won that game. This time around, I think if they're going to win the game and outduel Matt Stafford, it will be through the air on the backs of A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert. And I hope that's how they win this game, because it's unfortunate how much money they've invested in the passing game that they're still this inconsistent, but they really have been, like, between the passing offense, the rushing offense, the passing defense, and the rushing defense of those four units, the passing offense has been the most inconsistent. So they need to start stringing together some impressive performances through the air before the playoffs, and I hope this is a game where they do get right. They're right now 16th in overall passing DVOA, and I think that's just unacceptable when you have as many weapons as they do. So I think the key is to pass the ball in this game, and I want to see the Eagles be more consistent in that way, especially early in the game.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the big key. And I think at home, if you're the Rams, you need to find some way to get a better showing from the running game. I mean, since the bye week, I mean, you look at where the Rams are at, they're 25th in rushing success rate, they're 28th in EPA. I mean, you've really been a bottom 5 running team, and you don't have that explosive player like a Saquon Barkley. But what you do have is Kyren Williams, someone that can be consistent, that has dealt with some turnover issues in the last couple of games. But you really need more of a balance, and you need to find a way to keep that explosive Eagles offense off the field. If the Rams think that they can just rely on getting explosive plays when they really haven't had as many this season, Vic Fangio, he's designed to stop that. If they think that they need to play a clean football game, Matthew Stafford has to be on. The Rams basically have to bring their A game to have any chance of winning convincingly. They don't really blow teams out, but you need an A game from the Rams and need to hope that you get kind of a B minus game from the Eagles.
And Doug, it's such an important game for the Rams. I mean, that entire division is 6-4 or 5-5, and it's kind of a bloodbath in the NFC West right now. So this is as much of a must-win game for LA as there come.
By the way, man, I've been looking for my picture. I picture with Saquon Barkley. I can't find it. Whatever. I was going to show up, but I'll send it to you on the side, man. I need that T-shirt where he's doing the reverse.
Oh, I bought one. I have
hurdle.
The shirt.
You got the shirt?
I got the shirt. Yeah.
He's wearing the LeBron cleats.
Yep.
Saquon Barkley, man. He's been unstoppable. But how do you see this one playing out? Because the way I look at it is this. I mean, this is a Rams team that they don't ever see themselves punting on seasons. They don't ever see themselves tanking. I mean, they're always in it to win every single game. And when you have an elite quarterback when he's right, a Super Bowl winning head coach, veterans that care, and then rookies that are emerging, the Rams are going to bring it on Sunday Night Football. It's just, can you go out there and execute, and is there that big of a talent gap between the Rams and the Eagles? That's kind of what I worried about, because you look at their top 10 best players kind of matched up, you feel okay about that. When you kind of get past that, that's where the Eagles definitely have an advantage. But I do think that the Rams are going to be in this one in the fourth quarter. I think they certainly will cover, but I'm going to sleep on it one more night to throw out my prediction.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. Again, the line right now is 2.5. It's kind of a rat line there. So I kind of like the Eagles to cover that. I think it will be a one-possession game, but I'll take that minus 2.5. The over-under right now is at 48.5. Doug, I think there's going to be points in this game, so I'd probably take the over on that. But when it comes to like straight up, I think the Eagles will win this game. But yeah, I think it's going to be close. And again, the Rams need it badly. So I don't think this is going to be like even the game. I was surprised at how commanding of a win the Eagles had, no pun intended, against Washington. I don't think it's going to be the same kind of setup for Sunday Night Football or the same outcome.
It's going to be a good game. It's going to be a Sunday Night Football game for a reason, right? So you got to love that. Last question I have for you. Favorite Eagles uniform? Are you a throwback Kelly Green guy? I still always like the black. I know that sometimes
cool.
The black, especially now they've had the black helmets. I'm feeling those.
Yeah, they've been experimenting a lot finally the past few years with different jerseys. They've even implemented the black pants with the white helmet, or with the white jersey and the black helmet. They did that this year for the first time in the Brazil game. Kelly Green is the best looking jersey to me in the NFL, but I'm somebody that grew up with the Eagles being midnight green, and I think nostalgia sells in the league. So if everyone's now saying, "Oh, go to Kelly Green, go to Kelly Green," I think if the Eagles went to Kelly Green full time, everybody then would call for the midnight green. I just think that's kind of the way it works. So I think they have the perfect balance right now of the midnight green being the main, which is what I want. They won a Super Bowl in those jerseys. That's what I know. And the Kelly Green's the alternate with the black. I think they have the perfect rotation right now. Kelly Green looks the best. But for me, when I think of the Eagles, Doug, I do think of the midnight green. So I think those are crisp. I want to keep changing up, though. Give me green on green. When the black jerseys are out, give me white pants or green pants instead of all black. I want to be like the Oregon
Ducks on us, huh?
That's what I was going to say. I want complete jersey freedom in the NFL. We're finally getting there with the multiple helmets now that are available, but I want them to go all in on the college football style.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely where they're going towards. You know, the NFL loves that. They like cohesion, but they also like more money, and you definitely go that route.
What do you think about the Rams jerseys?
So, I mean, with the Rams jersey, I think when they first dropped, I was a little torn on them because I just think that, I mean, you look at Sports Illustrated in the 80s, they had the Rams as the number one jersey in the NFL for a long time.
Right.
Classic look. The horns are
Great
classic,
colors.
but I have grown to like the modern throwback. The white with the yellow is my favorite combination. Actually. The blue with the yellow is my second favorite. The soul with the Rams Royal. But look, I mean, for me, you've seen some teams kind of go a little like the Browns and the Buccaneers, for example. They kind of went a little backwards to a little more of a throwback look. They're going to rebrand at some point, and I kind of want to see a little more of a throwback, a little more traditional look from the Rams look. But yeah, I mean,
I agree. I think this is better than like the St. Louis Rams look for sure. I'm not a navy blue guy at all.
Yeah, you know what's funny? I will say, like, I know a lot of Rams fans kind of hate those jerseys, but for me, that's kind of like when I was a really young kid. That's when I started playing like video games, and that team with Marshall Faulk and the Greatest Show on Turf, and also kind of like represents that era of the Rams, kind of those. But I don't love them, right? But I'm like, they kind of have their place in Rams history.
I like when teams kind of do a modern version of a throwback, and that's kind of what the Rams are doing. But I'm with you, though. Just go all the way back. Like when you have a jersey that was as good as the Rams had in the 80s, just like, keep it simple, stupid, and just go back to those jerseys. So that would be
or at the very least, give me one throwback night per year, like you're doing with the Kelly Greens. That's all I ask for. You don't have to go full time. We'll stay with them.
Seattle's doing with theirs. Man, the throwback, the NFL is crushing it right now with throwback jerseys. So I hope the Rams get involved in that for sure.
You can go check out Louie over at Locked On Eagles. You can go check out Doug over at Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Rounding out Week 12, you have the Baltimore Ravens traveling to the West Coast to face off against the Los Angeles Chargers, another installment of the Horrible. So me, myself, Kevin Ostreicher, as well as David Drogemeyer of Locked On Chargers, gets you ready for Monday night's action. Crossover Thursday, Locked On Ravens, Locked On Chargers. Kevin Ostreicher, David Drogemeyer, taking you through everything you need to know heading into Monday night's action. Just a reminder, today's crossover edition of both Locked On Ravens and Locked On Chargers is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use that code, all lowercase, LockedOnNFL, to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Now, David, both these teams have plenty of paths to victory, and I think that we will see many different iterations of them play out over the course of the full 60 minutes. Now, when we're talking about the Ravens and what they have to do to win this game, first of all, I think that you have to, as we talked about, establish the run early against this Chargers defense. Don't let them off the hook. We know that, again, as you mentioned, they have maybe given up a little more in the rushing department than you would like to. I think the Ravens need to take advantage of that fact. And part of that is being able to mix in different things. Derrick Henry, Justice Hill, who's played really well. Keaton Mitchell has been back for a couple weeks, but he hasn't really had a lot of run. I'd love to see the Ravens get Keaton Mitchell involved in this game for a couple of carries and see what he can do with his lightning quick ability. The Ravens haven't had Lamar Jackson run. Lamar hasn't run nearly as much as he has over the course of his first 6 seasons. Now, part of that's by design, and obviously he is lighting it up right now through the air.
Last year's
as well.
playoffs probably has something to do with that.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Man. That's almost like, everyone in Baltimore they've thrown that out of their minds. They said, what game? They played in the AFC
Right,
Championship. No, they didn't. But we saw that even it happened last week where Derrick Henry fumbles on the second play of the game, and they don't really get him involved for the rest, finishes the game with 13 carries. You bring in Derrick Henry, not to be a 30-carry guy, but you want to use him even if it's not even running them with the ball, because it's the gravity. I love to use the word Locked On Ravens listeners are sick of me saying this word, but it's gravity. When Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson are on the field, there is a certain level of attention you have to pay to both guys. Because,
Absolutely.
Look, JK and Gus were great. They were awesome in Baltimore, but neither of those guys are Derrick Henry.
That's true.
Part of that is just because Derrick Henry's a mountain of a man. Like, it's just I wouldn't want to go out there and try to tackle him, let alone all these NFL defenders. So I give a lot of props to. So the first thing is you got to establish the run if you're the Ravens. Second of all, I think you have to get in Justin Herbert's head a little bit. The pass rush has been a little bit inconsistent for the Ravens this year. It has been better over the last couple of weeks. But guys like Odafe Owe, who had 3 sacks against Pittsburgh. I talked about Travis Jones. Nnamdi Madubuike, who's their big $100 million man in the middle of that interior. He's looked better over these last few weeks. Kyle Van Noy, who I know you're very familiar with, Mr. Kyle Van Noy.
Old friend alert.
Old friend.
Yeah.
He's doing his thing. Was great at the beginning of the
7
season.
7 sacks, man.
Yeah, he was
Crazy.
on it. He was on it. So those guys, if they can get to Justin Herbert and get in his head a little bit, Herbert's a vet, right? He's not going to be subject to like, rookie quarterback it gets flustered by a
No, yeah, definitely not.
That's not what we're saying. That's not what I'm saying here. But at least you have to make him think, can this offensive line block me? And by the way, that Chargers offensive line has some dudes on it. So easier said than done in that regard as well. But I think that if you're the Ravens, the key to victory is if you can get pressure on Justin Herbert, that's the big thing. And here's a final thing, David. We've talked about Chargers offense, Chargers defense, Ravens offense, Ravens defense, Ravens special teams. Last thing here is Justin Tucker has to be Justin Tucker. Not Justin Tucker from this year, though. The Justin Tucker that we have been accustomed
historically
to
great.
Yes,
Justin
greatest
Tucker,
kicker of all time, in my opinion. So we
of
know
course.
Tucker struggled this season. He's missed 6 kicks and has struggled even from inside 50 this season, which has been such a shock.
Yeah,
He
he's so
struggled from-
automatic, right?
Yeah, 50 plus the last 2 seasons has been iffy for him, and he's hooking all these balls wide left, which is actually kind of a trend throughout the league for a lot of kickers. So we saw it against Pittsburgh. The Ravens lost by 2 points. Justin Tucker left 6 points on the board. I expect this to be another close game between Baltimore and the Chargers. You can't leave points on the board. Tucker has to hit on his opportunities. Now, on the other side, David, what are 3 things the Chargers have to do to win this game?
Yeah, so 3 things that the Chargers absolutely have to do to win this game. Winning in the red zone. They got to play complementary football, and they got to win in the fourth quarter. So winning in the red zone, the Chargers have to find a way to get a couple stops in the red zone. The Ravens have the best red zone offense in the league.
Yep.
They score touchdowns on 77.8% of their red zone trips, which is a lot, okay. The Chargers got 2 stops in the red zone last week against the Bengals, and that was quite frankly the difference in the game. They score one of those touchdowns. It's it's a different looking ball game there. The Chargers have the second best red zone defense in the NFL this year. So we're going up against great versus great. The Chargers only allowed touchdowns on 40.1% of their red zone trips there. So they do an excellent job. They need to continue to do that. You get 1 or 2 stops where you turn 7 into 3. Those are winning plays in matchups like this where your margin for error is so razor thin. This right here in the middle of the season on a Monday night, this is a playoff caliber game. Don't get me wrong, okay? So you need to play playoff caliber football, which means you got to be as close to perfect as possible, which leads me to my next thing, playing complementary football. The Chargers offense needs to help the defense against this offense. The Chargers can't afford any of those offensive droughts that we've seen in the second half of games. They need to put together consistent scoring drives in the second half. And of course, they need the defense to force a turnover, get an interception, force a fumble. You got to be able to get the ball back, create a short field for your offense, and then win in the fourth quarter. Last one here. Last week, the Chargers started great. They dominated the first half, but they gave up 3 straight touchdowns to tie the ball game. Unfortunately, they won it late, but you can't take your foot off the gas. You got to put points up in that fourth quarter. Ravens second and fourth quarter scoring, second and second half scoring. The Chargers 24th in fourth quarter scoring, 29th in second half scoring. So it's just been really bad in that perspective. You can't have it in this game on Monday night. If the Chargers have a lead in the fourth quarter, you got to finish it. Go out there. That's when you want to run the ball. That's when you want to establish and dominate the line of scrimmage, when you're going to go put the game away and finish in victory formation. As last week proved, the best offenses in the NFL can put points up in a hurry, so you got to play 4 full quarters of football to win.
Yeah, man, both these teams have some fourth quarter scaries. And I know that you mentioned those Ravens stats in the fourth quarter. A lot of that heavy lifting from both those Bengals games, which are just absolute shootouts.
Yes, they were.
Those took years off my life. And I know that the Bengals just take years off of everybody's life.
They sure do.
That's what it is. You get a win, but it costs you. So
yeah,
that's what that comes down to. But I expect a good game here. Obviously, as we talked about, plenty of storylines. You can look any which way for them. But at the end of the day, this game is massive because you talk about playoff implications, as we talked about at the top of the show. Looks like Houston is probably going to be locked into that 4 seed unless something else changes. And you're looking at Buffalo, Kansas City, and whoever wins the North between Baltimore and Pittsburgh is that maybe 3 seed, maybe 2 seed.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people are looking at that Houston team. They look good against Dallas, but it's Dallas, right?
Dallas with a backup quarterback.
Yeah, it's Dallas. So I think a lot of people might be licking their chops to play Houston in that 5-4 game. And if the Chargers can win this game, they put more of a hold. I mean, look, this is the head-to-head right here.
Yeah.
And that when you talk about playoff
Tiebreak.
implications, tiebreakers are huge. So might not be thinking about a game in mid to late November, but when we're looking at late December, we're going to be looking back on this game and talking about, well, man, if only the Ravens won, or if only the Chargers had won.
Yeah.
That's going to be a massive, massive thing. You can check me out over at Locked On Ravens. Check David out over at Locked On Chargers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. That'll do it for the Ultimate NFL pregame show. A bunch of Week 12 great action on the docket. So be sure to enjoy your Sunday, enjoy football, and we'll be right back here next week talking about everything you need to know for Week 13 slate of games. And spoiler here, we got a lot of great matchups on the docket for then. So be sure to tune in next week, and we'll see you right back here then on the Ultimate NFL pregame show.